No, sir, no. Hell yeah. Let's get this done.
All right. How you talking, man?
Gentlemen,
At the time,
this is the start of a new era.
this was a very
Carry on.
all
Lieutenant Weaver, with me. Yes, sir.
close proximity. People were very afraid to leave their wife or their partner alone in the house. It was a climate of fear, we would call it now.
There was a significant amount of just pure terror because people in rural communities don't feel the closeness of a police force protecting them. They often have to protect themselves. And so they were terrified.
Cooper's need to fund his gambling fueled his violent robberies and burglaries. But there were no holes barred in his attacks. Not only did he rob, he sexually assaulted some of his victims as a mere afterthought, including 2 teenage girls he held at gunpoint.
These crimes were all shock to the
I figured that you should stay up here and let me do this alone.
What the fuck, you got a death wish?
No. That's why I think I should go in alone. Look, even with Weaver's jacked up Molotovs, we can't take an entire horde all at once.
I think this kind of thing, it casts a really long
So,
shadow over these places. There's rumors
I
of
figure I go down there.
speculation.
I get their attention. I pull off a few at a time, and then I run like hell. I gotta find somewhere to slow them down, maybe set a few traps.
And preyed on women alone. It was a long
And then I
time
blow 'em to
before
hell.
all the dots were joined up, and it was revealed that Cooper
Two
was
of us
much
running
more than
around
simply
down there. It's gonna be
robbing,
chaos.
capturing,
We'll just pull the horde down on each other. Now, you stay up here. You keep an eye on me.
This killer
Shit goes south. You right in there. You get me the hell out.
September
Unless you got a better
1944.
plan.
John William
I got nothing.
Cooper was born in Milford Haven, Wales. He was one of 7 children. His father worked as a
Got more Molotovs.
agricultural
Ammo
laborer.
in my saddlebags.
Soon John Cooper
Good,
himself
good. Shit's gonna
worked
come in handy.
as a local farmer.
He was part of the post-war baby boom generation. He left school at 15, he got involved in a range of different trades, which wasn't anything particularly unusual. So he appeared to have a fairly regular upbringing. There aren't any really obvious signs of the trauma, the abuse, or the neglect that we see in cases of serial killers.
He left home at 15. One of the reasons why he was able to leave is because he was a fairly talented guy around the farm, around in a rural environment. He could do a lot of things, so he could get by. And he was a very independent person. Most children wouldn't leave then because they'd be afraid to. He wasn't afraid because he was a man, he could take care of himself.
He was quite well known in the local farming community, making his way in the world.
Soon the wayward Cooper settled down to family life. He married his childhood sweetheart at the age of 21, and before long they welcomed a son and a daughter into the world.
From the outside, Cooper did appear to be a regular family guy. They had 2 children, so looking in, they looked to be the ideal nuclear family. Cooper presented quite a respectable veneer to the outside.
Tell me your plan again?
But
Like I said, find a way to slow them down. Sons of bitches like to clump up, climb all over each other. If I can find a narrow space between trucks, buildings, whatever, it'll take a while to get through. Once I get some space between me and them,
You'll blow them the hell up.
you got it. Rinse, repeat, a few times. No more horde.
So here's somebody
That's your plan.
That's my plan.
which isn't the real him.
Good luck, St. John.
He was quite well known,
Luck's got nothing to do with it.
quite well liked,
All right.
known to have a
I'm heading
violent
there.
temper, but nevertheless,
I see you. Let me know if you need my help.
so to speak, in a local pub.
Yeah, yes.
1978, at the age of 34, Cooper found work with the multi-million-dollar oil giant Gulf, working as a welder's mate at a local refinery. That same year, Cooper himself struck it rich, winning a newspaper competition to spot the ball.
He won £90,000, a fortune. In today's terms, it would probably £500,000, as well as a £4,000 Austin princess. If he had
That'll do
been
it.
a more temperate man, he would probably have saved some of that money.
But after giving £1,000 each to 10 of his family members, the generosity seemed to stop there. Cooper, the gambler, started burning a hole through his lucky winnings.
think because he did live that fast and high lifestyle, he continued to gamble, he continued to drink, he invested in fairly misplaced business ventures. So he was soon parted from that money. But once that money was gone, it didn't get rid of that sense of entitlement, that sense in which I want to have these things that I was able to buy before.
There's a hypomanic quality to him. He looks to me like he probably was what some people call a cyclothymic personality or manic depressive illness. And in his moments of euphoria, he gambles, he thinks he can do anything, and all of a sudden he looks down and his money's gone.
The seemingly happy-go-lucky John Cooper was in fact deeply troubled beneath the surface. His teenage son particularly bore the brunt of Cooper's rage. Not only was he subjected to beatings, at one stage he even claimed his father placed a shotgun into his mouth and threatened to kill him.
He contrived to be a violent and aggressive man. It drove the son out of the house. He couldn't bear.
Welkom bij One Casino. Speel online unieke games, je favoriete kaartmachines, videoslots en live casino. Met 24/7 Nederlandse klantenservice en razendsnelle uitbetaling. Fun, veilig en vertrouwd. There's only One Casino. Dat kost voor jou. Stop op tijd. 18+. OneCasino.nl.
Despite his son escaping the home at just 16, Cooper had to keep up the appearance of a happy family, enjoying their newfound wealth that he'd secretly squandered.
Cooper had developed this lifestyle where he was able to buy whatever he wanted. What didn't disappear was that sense of entitlement. So he simply switches to another way of getting those things.
Now you can't support that lifestyle on farm labourers' wages. The only way you can do it is by turning to crime, and in his case, turning to robbery.
His shotgun was now put to good use. Armed with ammunition and a balaclava, in 1983, Cooper embarked on a string of burglaries across Pembrokeshire.
Catch!
In an SAS-style survival book,
was the seeds of his life as a criminal. He got used to the neighbors thinking of him as kind of a rich guy. All of a sudden he didn't have any money. And so the crimes that he goes out to commit were burglary.
With no sign of getting caught during his 2-year crime spree around rural Pembrokeshire, Cooper thought he was on a winning streak. On the night of the 22nd of December 1985, he racked the stakes up even higher. His next target was barely a mile from his own doorstep, Scoverston Manor in Stainton.
Now, they are local farmers, they're wealthy, and Cooper is known to them, so this is quite a close-knit community.
They were rich and inclusive. Richard and Harris. They lived in three-story apartments.
Fire in the hole! Ready for this?
Run, motherfucker, run! Motherfucker!
Please just tell me that's all.
Motherfucker!
I can't believe it. You did it. You wiped out an entire horde.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Somebody gets eliminated from the suspect pool, and what is fascinating about these cases...
Sarah, are you there? Lieutenant Whitaker, this is Corporal St. John, reporting in. Come back.
And I think that to me says a lot about him.
Captain, I just tried to check in with Lieutenant Whitaker, and she's not answering.
Couldn't wait to tell her the good news.
Yeah, she'll be thrilled.
I bet. You'll see her soon enough. Don't meet Lieutenant Weaver. I want to tell him the news in person.
Following the Thomas
Okay, you earned that.
life in the quiet
Copy that.
harbor
St.
town
John
of
out.
Milford Haven seemed to go back to normality.
And as far as Cooper was concerned, he'd got away with it. Police officers drew a blank. Cooper had provided an alibi, some rather obvious solution, and so gradually the investigation tailed off.
As the talk of the town turned away from the Thomases, 2 years after their murder, John Cooper's wife was injured in a riding accident. So the couple moved several miles inland to the quiet village of Jordenston.
If you've put yourself in Cooper's position, he would have thought, well, I've got away with 2 murders. I'm home free. I can do whatever I want. Nobody knows I've got any kind of track record as a murderer.
But instead of laying low as a killer and keeping a low profile, 2 years later, in May 1989, Cooper couldn't resist another flutter on national television.
Cooper's arrogance knew very little by way of bounds. His appetite for celebrity in the end led him to appear on an ITV game show.
Could use this again.
Which involved playing darts and answering questions. He appeared almost 4 years after the Thomases were killed.
It's got that element of gambling to it. It's got that element of hedonism. And to be on Bullseye in the 1980s was a really big deal. It was something that would have stoked Cooper's ego quite significantly.
First of all, it's very rare for serial killers to voluntarily appear on TV or in any media for a very simple reason. They tend to be socially unskillful and shy. It's a foreign environment to them. But the fact of the matter is Cooper is not a typical killer at all. He's not reclusive. He's not quiet. He's not socially unskillful. He, in fact, is socially skillful, gregarious, had lots of friends, had lots of enemies also. He was fun. He was playful. He was impulsive. Maybe he was manic-depressive. He liked attention. And his lust for a bit of attention and maybe another opportunity to make some money like he did gambling.
Damn alarm.
I think it's quite revealing about Cooper's character. He is very much a narcissist. He likes people to look at him, and he's going to have millions of people looking at him when he's on this game show. So this very much does fall into that hedonistic, that egoistic kind of personality that he has.
Despite his time in the spotlight, John Cooper was beaten by his opponent. He walked away empty-handed. Now he would go back to what he knew best, armed robbery. A month after appearing on nationwide TV, he would strike once again. And once again, it would lead to murder.
Cooper was very much a gambler, and he was always trying to get that lifestyle back that the big win allowed him to have. And whether that was burglary, whether that was appearing on game shows, he was going to grasp at anything that would give him access to that lifestyle to which he felt entitled, those things he felt he deserved.
Just a month after his TV appearance, Cooper was stalking the Pembrokeshire countryside, looking for his next victims.
He was stealing money from innocent people to remain the man who had won Spot the Ball, to lavish his money in pubs, to appear to be Jack the Lad, to sustain his arrogance. There was nothing that Cooper would not do to maintain his position in the community. He was content only if he was famous, if he had a local swagger.
29th of June 1989. It was the final day of Peter and Gwenda Dixon's summer holiday. They were getting away from it all in the peaceful town of Little Haven. But their haven by the coast was to be anything but safe.
Peter and Gwenda Dixon were holidaymaking at a campsite near the coastal path. They'd come there from Oxfordshire. They went there regularly. It was one of their favourite haunts. He'd have been in the RAF and she'd been secretary. They were in their early 50s.
They decided to go for a walk. They wanted to let the tent dry off, so they decided to go for a stroll. And unfortunately, they were accosted by Cooper when they went out on that walk.
Masked in balaclava and threatening them with his trademark double-barrel shotgun, Cooper demanded Peter and Gwenda's valuables.
Now, Cooper demanded Peter's bank card, he demanded the PIN number, and he also demanded his wedding ring.
perhaps Peter and Gwenda hoped that this was merely a robbery. Sadly for the Dixons, it certainly wasn't.
When we try and imagine the final moments of Peter and Gwenda Dixon, this would have been absolutely terrifying because they've had this individual who's demanded their valuables from them.
Shit!
They probably think this is going to be over soon. He's going to walk away. And he could have walked away, but he didn't.
Instead, he tied their hands behind their backs, then shot Gwenda twice and Peter 3 times, killing them both almost instantly.
He chose to murder them, to execute them
Got it.
in cold blood. He did not need to do this. I mean, all murders are unnecessary, but I think when you look at the circumstances of this one, completely unnecessary. He's literally just getting rid of witnesses.
His second pair of victims, very similar modus operandi, both shot at close range with a shotgun. A shot to the head is instantaneously fatal with a shotgun. They would not feel pain from those injuries. But again, if you have 2 victims, the first one is shot, the second is going to be aware of what has happened, and there would be unimaginable fear, terror in that person's mind.
And in a sadistic twist, for this attack, Cooper sexually assaulted Gwenda Dixon, leaving her body naked from the waist down.
She's
It wasn't
crazy, man.
enough for him to rob this couple. He feels entitled to take whatever he wants, whether it's their possessions, their lives, and their dignity.
We don't know the exact nature of the sexual assault because she's ultimately killed. But this suggests that he's just impulses out of control. There's no opportunity that presents itself to him that he doesn't take.
Cooper's SAS-style survival techniques then came to hand. He dragged his victims' bodies well away from the coastal path, covered them with hazel twigs, then replanted bracken over them with the roots intact to prevent their discovery. Cooper then searched Peter's rucksack, swapped his bloodied trousers with a spare pair of shorts he found belonging to his victims, then headed to a bank in Pembroke.
Cooper used Peter Dixon's bank card to withdraw somewhere in the region of £300 over the next few days. Now this is a relatively small amount of money, and if you think this is the price of Peter Dixon's life, this is absolutely horrendous.
Not only that, but Cooper had cashed in on one of Peter Dixon's most prized and sentimental possessions.
Cooper went on to sell the wedding ring that he'd stolen from Peter Dixon, and he sold it for around about £20–25. This was a really small amount of money. That tells us how parasitic this individual is.
Meanwhile, the Dixon's son was getting worried as his parents had failed to come home, so he called the police. Peter and Gwenda Dixon's bodies were discovered 6 days after their disappearance when a walker spotted a swarm of flies coming from the bracken. The murders shocked the seaside town of Little Haven, but with Cooper careful to cover his tracks, the killer's identity was a complete mystery.
So a massive police investigation is underway. Over 6,000 people are interviewed, and again Cooper comes onto the police radar. His family again give him an alibi. He was with us on the day that this happened.
Cooper, by this point, must have believed in his own mind that he was invulnerable, that he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, in the way that he wanted, and get away with it. After 18 months, the investigation of Peter and Gwenda Dixon's murders was scaled down. It was a tragedy, but there was no convincing evidence to point the finger at Cooper.
This goes unsolved for years and years and years, and detectives even looked into the possibility of IRA involvement because there was a weapons dump found nearby. So this is unsolved. There's no justice.
Once again, John Cooper wasn't brought to book. Nothing seemed to stand in his
Oxygen
way
tanks.
as a career
These would blow
burglar
up pretty
and
good.
armed robber.
Throughout the 80s and into the middle 90s, Cooper continued. His habit of burglary or armed robbery is well established.
Out of control, Cooper seemed to be on a lucky streak. Whatever risks he took, he seemed to get away with. and he seemed untouchable. The sadistic side of the serial killer wasn't just attracted to easy cash. On the 6th of March 1996, he spotted a group of teenagers walking through fields next to a Milford Haven school.
Cooper emerges from the undergrowth, brandishing his shotgun. He takes one of the girls, who was 16, aside and rapes her. He then sexually assaults the 15-year-old girl.
All 5 teenagers were forced to lie face down during the ordeal.
He's wearing a balaclava and he's got a shotgun. You can just imagine how terrifying this sight must have been. It is the stuff of nightmares. This is going to be an absolutely horrendous experience for these young people. But I think for Cooper, it's a real ego boost for him. He's able to
We did it.
control
You did it.
and I think
We did it. Oh. I've never seen anything like this. With the way you were one step ahead of him.
Ever had a horde breathing down your neck? It really keeps the adrenaline flowing.
The Colonel's right.
As he
Maybe we can win this war.
shoots the shotgun in the air to terrify them. Now that was untypical Cooper. This was in daylight. It was a very extraordinary attack. Quite what must have come over him is open to speculation. He had been getting away, literally, with murder. He'd got away with a great many robberies. All of a sudden, he attacks a group of teenagers in the open.
So something is happening over time to Cooper, and I suspect the intensity and the wildnesses of his impulses are getting greater and greater and greater. The chances that he would get caught doing something like that are astronomical. An absolutely crazy thing to do, suggesting that at the core of him is a person who's just all impulse and no control.
Hey, how'd it go? I'm sorry, Lieutenant.
I would say that's further evidence
It didn't work?
that Cooper believed that
Sorry,
he could do
Lieutenant.
whatever he wanted, whenever he
You're out
wanted,
of a job.
whoever he wanted.
Hell, yeah.
You should have been there, man. We really lit him up.
Oh, man. We're going to celebrate tonight. The officer's mess.
All right. Looks like somebody's getting a promotion. Hey, man, you coming? You know what? I'm gonna catch up with you. I gotta take care of something first. All right, you handle that.
Sardis in Pembrokeshire.
That's the last of
He
it.
ties her up,
Be careful not to break anything.
determined,
Some of these things are
and she escapes,
irreplaceable.
frightening Cooper off.
What's going on? Where is the lieutenant? Corporal St. John. I'm sorry, sir. It's all right, son. All essential personnel doing R&D have been moved.
In hedgerows along the way.
Where? Because I need to deliver these supplies that she asked for.
I understand.
It was a shotgun that was in the end
There's
going to lead to his arrest for robbery.
been
Not only did Cooper abandon his weapon, he also discarded his balaclava.
After Cooper burgles the house, it all starts to unravel for him, and the police find their way to him. He comes onto their radar because they're suspicious of him and his involvement in this. And when the police do finally catch up with him, I think they are quite surprised at the magnitude of
Colonel's
the
orders.
things that they have.
Matt, you can't do this. You can't keep me locked in
That
here.
is
Stolen property in the cesspit on his property.
And then the Lord said to Noah,
500 house keys.
Enter
So
the ark,
this
you
is
and all your
somebody
household.
who really
For
has
you alone
made a profession,
I have seen
made
to
a
be
vocation
righteous before me in this time.
Cooper was arrested.
What are you talking about?
I'm sorry, Lieutenant.
You can't! Colonel, wait!
Hey,
It's fine.
They'd soon find this was
It's
no
fine.
ordinary armed robber, but a quadruple
man, I got the,
killer.
supplies that you
54-year-old
asked for.
serial killer John Cooper
Come on in.
was
Follow
languishing
me.
in jail on remand for a
I've been working on a new
string of
assignment.
burglaries and
Poison
armed
this time.
robbery. On the 10th of
Listen.
December, Cooper was
You make this, you
finally
have to do it carefully. If you don't, it could kill you.
Understood.
The police find a lot of forensic evidence pointing to Cooper
Yes, ma'am.
as an armed robber, and he is sentenced to 16 years.
It was when he was in prison serving his sentence that he first comes onto the radar of
St. John.
suspected of involvement in the four murders of the retail property teenagers.
In February 2006,
This is Captain Curry. Come in.
I'm here, Captain.
The Colonel has asked to see you. You'll find him in his chambers inside the Ark.
His chambers?
If you go in from the main camp, past the first storage area, there's a passage off to the left.
Okay, any idea what he wants?
Something about a duty.
So the finger of suspicion firmly pointed in his direction.
The police decide to go back over all the evidence to do with the Dixons and to see whether there is anything that could possibly connect Cooper to that killing. It was perfectly obvious to them.
Sir, I was... You know, when I was young,
Suspect, probably
we used to explore caves like these. Looking for petroglyphs, carvings by the Modoc, other tribes. Thousands of years old. You know, they never lived in these caves, the humans. In the cold and in the dark. But look at us.
With the advances in
Look
DNA
how
techniques
far
since their
we have
attack in
fallen.
1989,
The soldier who used to be assigned to Lieutenants Whitaker and Weaver, the soldier you replaced, has gone AWOL. He broke into my private chambers and took my personal copy of the Holy Bible. I want it returned.
Yes, sir.
I've marked his last known location on your map.
In this case, and I think to keep
Dismiss
things
it.
down, the police said to us, we only want you to look for DNA. And there were some things that we prioritized. Things like, for example, the rope with which Peter Dixon's hands were.
Sir, you there? Come in.
Corporal St. John, I won't tolerate insubordination. Private, I'm trying to work. Get out. Sorry, ma'am.
but trying to
Hey, Weaver.
Oh, Corporal St. John, come on in, man. Check out my home sweet home.
I love what you've done with the place.
Man, ain't this some shit? Wonder what they would have done with me if I failed.
Colder caves down that way.
Heard about that. You know, she didn't take it any better than I did.
No, she did not. Do you need anything?
Nah, man, I'm good. Oh, wait, you know what? There's something you can't get from me.
profile of the Dixon's
You
killer
hear that?
at first led investigators down a dead end.
We just hoped we'd find something. But because the bodies
Colonel
hadn't been
inside a big
discovered for
tomb,
about a
which you hadn't
week,
heard.
and because the weather had been very hot at the time,
Mennonite or
it
some
meant
shit.
that quite a lot of decomposition had happened.
Mennonites,
So
they
that
love
gave
music.
us
They
a
just
bit
have
of a
problem
problem.
dancing. Forget
And
it.
so we
No
got
shit.
one or two
Yeah, whatever, dude. I don't care. I need an
profiles,
MP3
difficult
player.
profiles, though,
Earbuds.
mixtures,
Anything.
you know,
Sounds.
we just thought this is
Are you
going to be
kidding
really
me?
quite difficult. And we
Are you
hadn't
not
got
kidding?
anything obvious that was shouting at us at that point.
By August 2008, the hunt for DNA had proved fruitless. With Cooper's imminent release on parole from his burglary and armed robbery sentence, the man leading the inquiry, Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Wilkins, was getting extremely worried.
Hey, sir, you there? Come in.
Corporal St. John, I won't tolerate insubordination. Private, I'm trying to work. Get out. Sorry, ma'am. Colonel's orders. Gotta keep eyes on you 24/7.
Lieutenant. Sorry, yeah, just reporting in. I got a question about your requisition form.
Yes, Corporal.
It says that you need me to collect water hemlock.
Yes. It grows along the edges of wetlands. Look along the north edge of the Klamath Marsh. You should be able to find it there.
Klamath Marsh. Got it.
Remember, Corporal, it's highly poisonous. The most toxic plant that grows in North America.
Okay, I'll be careful.
The last report said that there were infected crows in the area, so you might want to take something to burn out their nests.
Burn out their nests. Got it. One more thing. That other project that I'm working on, I'm gonna have more information on that soon.
By switching tack from DNA to
Lieutenant
looking
Whitaker
for
out.
textile fibers that could link the various crimes,
I gotta need some
St.
shotgun
John and
ammo.
his team came up with some
Burn out the
interesting
nests. Gonna need Molotovs.
It was amazing. Almost immediately, we started finding textile fibers, and the first ones we found were these blue acrylic fibers. We started with Peter Dixon's belt. We started with surface debris that had been recovered from his and Gwenda's body, and almost immediately we started finding a connection between those, and then a connection between a glove that had been left in hedgerows. This was a really big moment because now we were starting to believe that there was something
The glove left in the hedgerow was identified as one of Cooper's that he'd discarded near to his home. Not only was this now forensically linked to the Dixons, another of the glove's fibers was later found in debris from one of the teenage sex attack victims. But it was a pair of shorts found in Cooper's bedroom drawer that would be the real turning point for the investigation, as another member of the forensics team, Philip Avenel, remembers.
The strategy initially was to look at the debris that had been collected from the surface of the shorts during their initial examinations. That led us to identify the
Hey, Sergeant. Still breathing, I see.
debris that was collected from the surface of the
Things
shorts.
must be slow out there,
And that
huh?
blood flake then led
So,
on to
just
the
this
first
one
DNA
unit?
match.
Well, okay.
That blood came back matching Peter
Corporal,
Dixon.
you come back in one piece, all right?
See you, Sarge. Keep those hands washed.
Her team were looking for.
Move along, buddy, move along.
Used as senior investigating officer, DCS Steve Wilkins.
I gave Steve a ring on his mobile, and he answered it, and it turned out he was driving his car, and I didn't want to tell him what he was driving because I knew that this would be huge for him. And so I said, well, you pull in. And when he pulled in, I said, well, I wanted you to pull it because actually we may have found your golden nugget of objective physical forensic evidence. It was the breakthrough, and it was a key part of the evidence at the end of the day.
The team discovered this tiny flake had come from a patch of blood ingrained in the shorts that the naked eye couldn't see.
The blood would have to have been wet when it was deposited on the shorts, so we know that those shorts were in the proximity or have been around at a time at which Peter Dixon has bled.
The forensics team were now on a roll. They then turned their attention to one of John Cooper's guns that had been found abandoned in the hedge during the failed armed burglary of the local schoolteacher.
The barrels had been painted with black paint, a lot of which had chipped off, so we knew that it wasn't a manufacturer's application. And it posed the question, what if that firearm had been painted or covered up after the event had taken place, perhaps to disguise it or to alter it, or just to do something to it after the murders had been carried out.
And so we scraped away some of this black paint until we found some blood actually sitting on the metal surface of the gun. And we took that and again profiled it, and it again gave us Peter Dixon's profile.
By now, the evidence was stacking up against Cooper, but it was his starring 1989 appearance on Bullseye that was the final nail in the coffin for the killer. Police had heard about Cooper's fondness for the limelight, and in February 2009, a copy of the episode that he appeared on was traced back to ITV's archive in Leeds. They compared it to a sketch of a suspect seen using Peter Dixon's bank card, wearing similar shorts to the ones found in Cooper's home.
When they looked at the video and then compared that video to the artist's impression of the man who might have attacked the Dixons, the two were almost identical. I think the superintendent said it was as if you could trace one over the other. It was almost a perfect match. So now we begin to have the net closing in on Cooper.
Now Cooper was back out on the streets, having served 10 years of his 16-year sentence for armed robbery and burglary. But time was running out for the killer.
More and more details being heaped on top of what the policemen are coming to believe is an absolutely airtight case against Cooper. In May, barely months after he's got out of jail, Cooper is rearrested.
The police even filmed the moment they pounced on Cooper as he went to collect his morning paper, satisfied they'd put this dangerous killer back in prison.
He continues to deny everything. But the forensic evidence is beginning to become
St. John, you there?
Weaver, yeah. I can barely hear you, though. You're breaking up.
This is dead. That's processing the town at all. Hey, I know where you can find it.
Further forensic tests on the clothing had thrown up something even more interesting.
The hem had actually been taken up, so they took the hem down and they found another piece of DNA evidence. Now, this DNA belonged to the daughter of Peter and Gwenda Dixon, so this proved fairly conclusively that these shorts belonged to Peter Dixon.
Police believe these were stolen from Peter's rucksack just before Cooper fled the murder scene. Cooper was finally brought to Swansea
Okay,
Crown Court
where's
on
that?
the 22nd of March 2011 to face justice.
Community college, the one east of here off Highway 97.
His own son also took to the stand, unmasking the dark and side of the lovable road. He endured his habitual nighttime walks, stalking the local Berkshire
Sure,
countryside,
Weaver, whatever you say.
and dangerous.
He denied everything. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
O'Brien.
Sustained precisely.
Come in, O'Brien. I know you were in this channel.
That did not.
Drifter, I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. The radio's been dead.
Turn it off. Look,
As did.
I need your help.
I'm listening.
My wife, the woman you helped me track down.
26th of May, he continued to protest
I
his
found her, O'Brien. She's alive.
That's incredible. The odds of her making it out.
Judge John Griffith
No, look, I don't have time. Look, I found her. She's alive. She's being held by the militia. The guys that you told me about.
I'm sorry.
Okay, look, I don't need your goddamn sympathy. I need your help. She's being held in a place I can't get to her. I need you to help me to break her out.
You know I can't do that.
Case.
Wait a second. Okay, but there's something you have to do for us first.
Name it. I will do anything.
In my time in
Keep your radio on this time.
He was incredibly parasitic. He would just take what he
O'Brien.
wanted from people, and he had absolutely
O'Brien.
no qualms
Damn
about
it.
killing them. These murders were absolutely unnecessary.
A vain braggart who wanted nothing more than to swagger his way through life, pretending he was rich.
Drifter, are you there?
At other people's expense.
O'Brien! Okay, where the hell have you been?
Returned to jail with a whole
Me at the coordinates I've just
He
transmitted.
was almost certain he was killed again.
He terrorized the
O'Brien,
countryside,
how?
robbing loads in their homes and threatening them with their lives. He sexually assaulted and raped young girls who accidentally crossed into his path.
Yeah,
He killed
nice
4
shit.
people in cold blood for just a few £100. This makes John Cooper one of the world's most evil.
Never seen anything like this. Never seen anything.
It is a
Corporal St. John, this is Colonel Garrett. Report.
Yes, sir.
Corporal, good, yes. Another traitor was discovered in our midst. A spy working for the anarchists.
Anarchists.
You were
Whoa, 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 whoa.
What was this? Terrifying crime.
This was a true whodunit.
Yes, you remember.
Nobody was a suspect at that
He
point.
escaped before he could
This
be
is the story of a
apprehended.
mother's desperate search.
He was chased north, but our patrol lost him. I marked the position he was last seen on your
So
map.
was the rest of his
We
body.
need him alive, Corporal. We need to find out what he was doing. What he knows.
to
What is
unearth
going
the
on.
truth.
It's my job,
Yes,
my
sir. I'll do
responsibility
my best.
to bring someone to
Yes, to
justice
you.
who's responsible for this
Yes, to
horrific crime.
Dismissed.
Are you evil?
Somewhat, yes. Former KGB officer.
Deliberately did such an evil thing.
Murder was afoot.
This is Ricky to Lost Lake. Come back.
Yeah, Ricky, what's up?
The morning of
Boozer!
January 18th,
Can you hear me?
2008.
Dig to the Lost Lake camp. Come back.
Just checking in to see what else Addie needed. She
A homeless man collecting
Ricky, I don't
bottles for
know.
cash
Oh,
is
Mike
searching
said-
through a residential dumpster when he makes
Who's
a
man?
sickening
Ricky?
discovery.
Give him hell. Give him hell.
Inside a garbage bag is what appears to be a dismembered right arm. That's when nearby resident John Edwards is called to the front door.
And the homeless guy says, quick, you have to come look in the dumpster. So we went back to the dumpster and I opened up the
Hold on, I never did finish burning out this nesting zone.
Arm, cut from approximately the collarbone, just right across there.
Edwards makes a frantic call to 911.
Well, he was kind of a body when it burned dead in the dumpster. Like a complete arm with like blood on it. I don't think they actually believed me when I said that there was, you know, a human arm in the dumpster. I think they might have thought it was a bit of a crank call.
Investigator
Weaver,
O'Brien
here.
gets to the location.
St. John!
Initially, I thought there's no way that this
I was housed in some kind of tent. It was like right in the middle of the camp.
that just isn't a real body.
Can you tell me anything else? I mean, come on, these
Patrol
all kind of look the
officers have
same.
already secured the scene when O'Brien arrives.
Yeah, it was
And
near flat.
sure enough, it was a human arm.
Patriotic. All right,
He was all the way from the
I'll
wrist.
have a look. St. John out.
Right the way up to the top of the arm. So
Where is it?
God damn it.
It's gotta be close.
Or bikers or something like that.
The forensics is Joe Anderson.
His vital as a sergeant of the forensic unit to gather what is left at the scene from the offender and paint that picture for the homicide investigators.
And the picture is a shocking one.
Instantly, we knew we definitely had a homicide on our hands, and the first thing on my mind was that we need to identify this individual as a starting point.
While police comb through other containers within a 5-block radius, Anderson has the dumpster containing the arm transported to the forensic unit to be searched.
It's not a very glamorous job because one of my team had to suit up and go inside the dumpster. You can imagine we have to go through every bit.
I smell a
That's
nest.
when they
Could be right here.
grisly discovery.
In the corner of the dumpster, we found a similar type of garbage bag.
One. Yeah, time to light it up.
In the garbage bag, we found the second or the left arm. DNA is awesome. However, just seems to be living. So where's the rest of his body? Oh.
When a dismembered arm is reportedly found in a Calvary dumpster, lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson is called to the location.
All we did was enter forensically as to not disturb the scene, just as it was. spent 121 days in the hospital fighting to live. And I was told that he was going to have all kinds of difficulties, but he grew up fine.
On the bright side of life. Always look at the bright side of life.
Je kunt het.
Tall.
Dat is gewoon een fucking horde daar. Kijk daar wat hier ligt.
An opinion shared by neighbor Aaron Lynn.
Chad was amazing, you know, he was the typical kid. Yeah, he got into trouble here and there a little bit. Nothing, you know, too much out of the ordinary of anyone else's age. He was very, very loyal. He'd give you the shirt off his back if he thought you needed it.
He loved people. He loved all kinds of people. He was a kind person. Sometimes I would get angry with him because he was just a bit too kind, you know?
But there was another side to Chad Larky.
Looking at his background, he's got a couple of confrontational issues regarding drugs, bar fights. He'd had a domestic with his parents. You could definitely see his behavior kind of ramping up over the past, the most recent couple of years.
But what could possibly motivate someone to so brutally murder and mutilate this young man?
It's a very violent, very deliberate act. And in our forensic unit, we always say anyone is capable of homicide, but it's a different level when someone is capable of dismemberment.
And as the lead forensic officer on the case, Anderson hopes that the savage killer has left behind a clue.
As proper protocol, we use tape to make sure that we caught all of the potential trace evidence, such as fibers or hair, and ensure that if there's something there, we will find it.
Meanwhile, police release a statement about the Larky killing.
All we ever told the community and the media was that we had one arm that was located.
Oh.
By not revealing the discovery of the second arm to the public, police create what's called holdback information, crucial details about the murder that only the killer could know. The news of Chad Larky's gruesome murder sets the entire city on edge.
Gotta be close to a nest.
Calgary Police Staff Sergeant.
They're shocked because it's dismemberment. When people become
Here's another nest.
Let's
burn it up.
Investigators have learned from Chad's life that he had spent the evening of the murder at a Calgary bar.
We were able to get Chad's cell phone records by a search warrant.
It confirmed the fact that he'd been in the downtown area prior to the homicide.
We know that he had been drinking, and we were able to establish that Chad had phoned for somebody to come and pick him up. And we actually have the last phone video of Chad leaving that apartment.
Chad's phone call was to his father, James Larky. Police contact him.
Chad's father really did not want to come and talk to us. He didn't want to know any details about his son's death. This was very strange. I don't know any parent that wouldn't want to know the details and to assist in the investigation.
It is only when police threaten James Larky with arrest that he agrees to speak with them. And on Saturday morning, 24 hours after the discovery of his son's remains, he sits down for an interview with investigators. He tells them that Chad phoned him because he was stranded at the bar, and that Larky was taking his son home when Chad decided to visit friend Dean Commanda.
Dean comes down, meets
Here
them
it
in
is.
the apartment building.
I hope it's
They
worth all
give
this trouble, Weaver.
Chad's dad some money to go buy some mix. Chad's father comes back a short time later with the mix and gets into the apartment, makes some phone calls, and ultimately goes home.
But is James Largy telling the truth? Or was this young man murdered, then brutally dismembered by his own father?
There's no doubt that we suspected Chad's father may have had something to do with it.
We followed up James Largy's story saying that he had gone out for mix. We went and obtained the video to make sure that that's where he was.
His story checks out. James Largy is innocent, and investigators are back to square one. When Calgary police are called to the scene of a dumpster containing a dismembered arm.
En volgens mijn berekeningen kunnen we gewoon 15% meer afschrijven.
En volgens mijn berekeningen kunnen we gewoon 15% meer afschrijven.
Maar hoe gaan we dat internationaal doen?
Wordt het niet eens tijd voor LOE? Want met een opleiding van de LOE heb je wel de kennis in huis. LOE, groei door.
Investigators must determine the identity of the victim and the motive for the murder.
Is this some type of organized crime group that is sending a message or trying to get revenge on somebody?
Police soon discover a second arm, and lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson begins the grisly job of searching for clues.
When we tape the arms, we're believing that the offender has left something behind on the arms, whether it be hair, fiber, potentially.
Chad Largy had spent the evening of his murder at a Calgary bar, then called his dad to pick him up. Police contact James Largy, who reacts with indifference to his son's death and refuses to cooperate with them.
There's no doubt Chad's father was absolutely a person of interest for us.
But the father's story about having dropped off Chad at friend Dean Commanda's turns out to be true. And it is by no means the first time police have heard the name Dean Commanda.
Commanda had been known to us for a long time. He had a known criminal history. He had a known drug-related history.
But could the 22-year-old have actually had a hand in the killing and savage mutilation of his best friend?
There is nothing in their past that would indicate that Commanda would have killed Largy.
Nor, according to Commanda's girlfriend, did Dean have the opportunity. She says he was with her the night Chad was murdered. What's more, Commanda seemed genuinely worried when Largy dropped out of sight.
We were able to get access to Chad's cell phone, and Dean had left several voicemails for Chad after the murder.
At the Calgary Police Forensic Lab, Sergeant Jolene Anderson has come to a gruesome conclusion about Chad Largy's dismembered limbs and the person who committed the savage act.
He certainly changed the method with which he dismembered the first arm compared to the second arm.
The first had been sawed off.
I imagine it took a significant amount of time and force to dismember the first arm.
By the time he got to the second arm, the murderer had the hang of it.
Essentially cutting the tendons in the muscle and pulling the arm out of its socket. As you can well imagine, it would have to have been very violent.
This ghastly evidence tells investigators that Chad Largy's dismemberment was not the work of a seasoned killer, but of a novice unaccustomed to such a horrific act. In their appeal to the public for tips, police intentionally do not release information about the discovery of the second arm.
When we found both arms in the dumpster, we kept that as holdback.
Important details only the killer would know.
Oh.
Police are inundated with calls from shocked Calgarians.
One of the tips is from a rental company. They rented out a meat cutter, and the person that returned the meat cutter after having it for the weekend left it full of flesh and full of blood.
Could those remains be Chad Largy's?
I was tasked then to follow up with the owner of the business, find out who had rented it, and make contact and interview the people who were involved.
Locked. Je hebt toch al lang geopend?
Blood analysis reveals that the remains are not the victims, but that of a slaughtered animal. And the person who had rented the meat cutter was a butcher who had neglected to clean it before returning it.
Okay, let's take a look around.
Now investigators have received a report about a woman who claims to know a great deal about Chad Largy's murder.
Shit, wrong way.
If true, it could provide them with a crucial break in the case.
My partner and I went and met with her and interviewed her, and she tells us that she was there when it took place, she witnessed it, and she provides a lot of details.
But she seems unaware that 2 arms have been discarded in the dumpster, proving to police that, despite her story, the woman was not a witness to the murder.
We were able to determine that she was just bragging for the sake of bravado, really. So that kind of thing is very, very frustrating in these investigations. We don't have time to be chasing down these false leads. We have to identify a suspect. We need to identify, in this case, a scene, so that we can go there and get our people in. Forensics do deteriorate over time, so we need to get there as quick as we can.
All right, where?
Investigators in the murder of Chad Largy have come to believe that his death and grisly dismemberment was the work of an amateur.
It was pretty clear that one arm had been pulled out of the joint. The other arm had been sawed off.
Police are motivated to find answers for the victim's mother.
I needed to know that he was not alive when he came up.
Investigators have determined that the last person to see victim Chad Largy alive was 22-year-old Dean Commanda.
Commanda and Largy were friends, and there is nothing in their past that would indicate that Commanda would have killed Largy.
Meanwhile, police lose valuable time in the hunt for Largy's murderer on dead-end leads and false confessions.
We don't have time to be chasing down these false leads. That kind of thing is very, very frustrating in these investigations.
Then O'Brien gets a call from a rancher who thinks a burn site on his property just outside of Calgary could relate to the case.
It had some knives burnt in this site. I thought, what are the chances of that? I mean, that didn't make a lot of sense to me, but you never know.
To be certain, O'Brien sends a team to check it out.
When our crime scenes unit gets out to the scene, it's an open area, it's very windy. Most of the ash from the burn site has actually already blown away.
On the scene, lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson.
In there we found cutlery, burnt cookware.
Including a collection of charred knives. And the torch site reveals other details.
Seems in January, so it was somewhat cool. There was light snow on the ground, so we were still able to recover tire impressions as well as footwear impressions.
All of which could be invaluable if the burn site has anything to do with Chad Largy's murder. But there is nothing at the scene to suggest that it does. Suddenly, something catches Anderson's observant eye.
Our other officers were photographing and seizing as they do, and overall I was standing back watching, and I saw a receipt kind of blow by in the wind. I picked it up and had a look at it and thought, this is very odd.
It is a receipt from a 7-Eleven store from 2 weeks before.
But how could a random receipt connect this burn site to their case?
I then followed up that receipt to a 7-Eleven. Then going through with the timestamp, I was able to get video evidence of the suspect buying minutes for his phone.
And the man who purchased those minutes is Dean Commanda, Chad Largy's closest friend. And the last person to see him alive.
Right around that same time, some of the detectives working on the case did some computer checks on our database, and they found that Dean Comanda had rented a rental truck which had dual tires.
The same kind of tires that made the marks in the snow at the Springbank burn site. That's when police are shocked to discover
that rental truck had been lit on fire. Although that fire had extinguished itself, there had been an attempt to destroy this truck.
Fortunately for investigators, the cab of the truck was relatively intact.
So we were able to find a pair of loafer-type shoes that were in there. Those shoes match up with footwear impressions that we find out at the Springbank burn site.
Power's off. Figures.
Never seen anything like this. Never seen anything.
Further search of the truck turns up what could be another important clue.
Beside the driver's seat, we also find a label for a jerry can.
It became my task then to take that label and find out the origins, and I went to the Canadian Tire, which then suggested that that particular SKU number would go to a petrol can, and then you take the time period, which leads us to video evidence, which they had in their petrol can store.
What the video shows fascinates police.
We have Dean Comanda going to a gas station on the western edge of our city, buying a jerry can, buying some gas. We have household items being burnt in Springbank in the western part of our city.
Oh, God damn it.
The truck that Dean had rented. Again, an arson about a block from where she returned to.
Which might link Dean Comanda to the burn site and burned out truck. But so far, there is nothing that connects him to Chad Largy's murder and brutal dismemberment. That's when investigators spot a strange bit of coiled wire amongst the burn site debris.
We weren't sure what it was. Take a closer look at it. And what it is a coiled door stop.
So why would a remnant of household hardware be of interest to homicide investigators?
Somebody was cleaning up, and somebody had thrown out pieces of baseboard, which would include this coiled door stop.
He has an idea about who that somebody is. Dean Comanda. And O'Brien believes Comanda was cleaning up Chad Largy's blood, then trying to destroy the evidence.
So now what I need to do is to work on a search warrant to get into Dean's apartment, where he believes is where the crime was committed. Forensics do deteriorate over time, and so we need to get there as quick as we can.
It has been more than a week since the discovery of Chad Largy's arms in a Calgary dumpster, but police have yet to find the rest of his body or identify his savage killer. Despite investigators' belief that a burn site on the outskirts of Calgary has nothing to do with their case, they send a team to check it out. They find charred cookware and cutlery, including a collection of knives. And lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson spots a receipt.
Was blowing along the prairie, and I'd stepped on it, picked it up, and realized that this was, in fact, potential key evidence.
Officers trace it to a convenience store and pull the surveillance video.
And sure enough, we have Dean Comanda going into that particular 7-Eleven store and purchasing some minutes for his cell phone.
Meanwhile, police discover that Comanda had recently rented a vehicle with the same dual tire marks found at the scene of the burn site. Although the truck has been torched, investigators are able to retrieve a pair of shoes from the cab.
There's a very clear characteristic that we found on the footwear, and we were able to do a comparative chart with the one footwear impression that we found at scene.
They also pull from the truck a jerry can. Police trace it to a gas station, and surveillance video shows Commander purchasing the can and then filling it with fuel. But the evidence indicates only that Dean Commander may be responsible for the arsons. It's not until investigators discover a doorstop at the burn site that they begin to believe that Commander may have killed and dismembered Chad Largy in his condo, then ripped out and set ablaze any trace of the crime.
Really, Dean is now, no doubt about it, has become our number one suspect in this case.
Police apply for a warrant to enter Commander's apartment, although they know it will take days to process their request. In the meantime, having discovered that Commander's car is nowhere to be found, they get a search underway for it.
We felt that because it had gone missing, that it may have some information that may be related to the case. Detective
What the fuck
O'Brien
is that
had
fucking
put together
generator?
a bulletin that was sent out to our district offices, our traffic unit. It was sent out to our partner agencies around southern Alberta to see if anyone could locate this vehicle.
Within hours of us putting that out, and within hours of us talking to the media about it, I received a call from an RCMP officer who said that she had found a vehicle and it had been at the side of the road on fire. The license plate was missing, the VIN number was missing, and it matched the offender's vehicle. So again, we have another link to Dean here and torching of his car.
Why would Dean Commander have set his own car on fire? Did it contain something he was trying to destroy? Cliff O'Brien tries repeatedly to contact Commander.
I am phoning him relentlessly to come in and talk to me. And I am leaving him voicemails. And I am phoning his friends. I'm going to his house and leaving my business card, so he now knows that he needs to come talk to me.
But when Commander ignores investigators' calls, they park a surveillance team outside his residence. Then O'Brien calls to tell Commander the jig is up.
Within an hour of that phone call and me leaving that voicemail for him, Dean and his girlfriend come screaming out of the residence, get into a car, and drive very, very quickly, very erratically, to a local hospital. Our surveillance team goes into the hospital and can see Dean being wheeled into emergency with some type of bandage on his hand, and Dean is screaming.
And investigators think they know how their suspect injured himself.
During the attack on Chad, and during Chad's murder, that Dean cut his hand, likely from the knife slipping.
So why was Commander admitted to the hospital not for a knife wound, but a third-degree burn on the palm of his hand? Police have a theory.
But when he knew that we were coming for him, he put on a frying pan onto his stove, and he put his cut hand right onto the frying pan to cover up the fact that he had this knife wound.
And with his girlfriend clearly involved in the ruse, Dean Commander's alibi for the night of the murder goes out the window. It is the behavior of a desperate man.
Yeah. Admit, it's gonna bring them all down on me.
Conceal evidence, but in retrospect, what he's doing is working right out.
Alright, let's see what they got
But
there.
investigators still don't have enough of a case against Commander to arrest him, and their warrant to search his apartment has yet to come through. Police decide to keep a team on Commander's tail.
Dean and his girlfriend go to a movie theater. So I asked our surveillance people to go in and to see if there was any cast-off DNA. Our surveillance unit was able to seize a straw that Dean had been using, and we were able to send that to the crime lab and get Dean's DNA off of that straw.
Shit!
Then, on January 30th, investigators have finally granted the warrant to search Commander's residence.
Leave all that shit. We don't
This
have room
was
for it.
taking us,
I didn't see the order. What's going on? Why are we bugging out? I saw the satellite footage. They're coming. Up 97, the I-5. We gotta reach our position in less than 2 hours. I mean, infected. No, Morris, idiot. Yes, infected. Mobs of them. Millions of them.
Police discovered Dean Commanda's burnt-out car they suspected contained incriminating evidence. Perhaps the blood of murder victim and close friend, Chad Larky. Then the 22-year-old Commanda badly burns his own hand with a frying pan, and police believe he's trying to hide the knife wound he received struggling.
What about the camp? The refugees? Look out there. How many helos do you see? I don't know, a half a dozen? And how many refugees?
Police put a surveillance team on command.
More maybe. A lot.
Follow him to a movie theater.
You get it.
Then lift his DNA from a discarded drinking straw.
Your damn mouth shut. You got it?
It's not until 10 days after Larky's death and gruesome dismemberment that police have granted the warrant to search the site that they believe to be the scene of the crime. The suspect's hunt.
Government's finest. Nice job, assholes.
Commanda a lot of time to destroy evidence.
Lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson will have her job cut out for her.
Immediately we see that there's carpet's been removed, underlays been removed, en volgens mij de rekening kunnen we gewoon 15% meer afsluiten.
En volgens mijn rekening kunnen we gewoon 15% meer afsluiten. En dan gaan we dat internationaal doen.
Wordt het niet eens tijd voor LOE? Want met een opleiding van de LOE heb je wel de kennis in huis. LOE, groei door.
And the condo is in somewhat disarray.
I can see that baseboards are missing. I can see lots of cleaning supplies around. Very evident to me, just standing in the hallway, looking in, that there had been substantial amount of cleanup.
Anderson records video evidence of the crime scene and considers where to best concentrate her search.
Just by looking at the pattern with which the carpet and the baseboards were removed, the scene of
I smell it. Gotta be getting close.
Hallway area, and probably the dismemberment in the bathroom area. First thing that we did was a basic white light exam.
Yeah.
And the slow, methodical method will give you we will go through the different wavelengths of light with different types of filters on our eyes to protect our eyes, as well as filters on cameras so we can capture what we're seeing so we can present it later in court.
While forensics officers examine every inch of the bathroom, in the kitchen, they discover bloody bandages in the garbage.
So, which of course is very unusual because it's a homicide scene. Obviously, it wouldn't have helped the victim to have a bandage.
Police compare DNA from the blood to the DNA found on Commander's drinking straw.
It's prophosphates, Dean's blood.
Evidence of the wound he received during the attack on Chad Larky. But without proof of Commanda having murdered Larky, their case against him is largely circumstantial.
It is a difficult thing to sit there and wait for the updates from the and on pins and needles, waiting to see if we have the evidence that we need.
Anderson's painstaking process pays off.
The CSI programs is somewhat glamorous and somewhat glorified. This was far from that. We were crawling behind someone's toilet and looking for forensic evidence.
But does the blood belong to Chad Larky? If so, investigators will finally have the evidence they need to convict Commander for the murder and brutal dismemberment of his best friend. While they wait for DNA results, forensics officers continue to search Commander's life. And in a box of clothes, find a stained pair of jeans. Is it blood?
Those were my exact words.
And will be
Whoa, 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 whoa. Ja, een beetje boven. Kan het heel hoor.
Amount of blood, loaded the materials into a rental vehicle, and drove them to the outskirts of Calgary. After torturing at the Springbank site, the commander returned to town and set the rental truck on fire in order to destroy any DNA and to try to cover his tracks. Lead forensic investigator Jolene Anderson is proud of the work she and her team contributed to the investigation.
This truly was a forensic case file, and just for us to be able to link all of these very diverse scenes, everything from the West outdoor burn scene in Springbank to the condo to the U-Haul, everything fell into place almost systematically.
In court, Commander maintains that Chad Larky was the aggressor and that he killed his friend in self-defense. And on February 13th, 2007, a little more than a year since Chad Larky's gruesome death, Dean Commander pleads guilty to manslaughter. He is sentenced to 10 years, less time already served. Commander's girlfriend is not charged. Have never been found. In 2009, Sergeant Jolene Anderson was promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant and is now in charge of Calgary's forensic crime team. For more information, go to myviva.ca/murder she saw.
On the 24th of February 1986, police in Talladega, Alabama, forced entry into the home of 24-year-old Sherry Weathers. The profound school for nearly a Sherry and two young children had been strangled to death and piled in the shape of a cross.
The utterance of it, of not only killing him, strangling them, but then posing them to be discovered. It's an act of a vile human being.
The horrific scene will forever be etched in the minds of the two detectives who worked on the case.
When you see something like that, you can't help but think about your own child. This could happen to my child too.
And so now you know you got to do everything you possibly do to bring this person to justice.
The killer was a 31-year-old artist named Daniel Siebert, and his macabre masterpiece was far from complete. 2 more bodies would soon be discovered, but the police had no idea where to find him.
In the wind. We didn't know where he was, but we knew that somebody was going to die until he was caught.
Daniel Siebert had made his mark as one of the world's most evil killers.
Wow. Ja, dat gaat moeilijk, hè? Als je zo ligt. Kijk.
When 33-year-old Daniel Siebert was sentenced to death for the murder of Linda Jarman on the 17th of April 1987, it signaled the end of the killer's cold-blooded career. On the 19th of August, he received a second death sentence for the murders of Sherry Weathers and her 2 children. Officially found guilty of 5 murders, authorities believe that Siebert was responsible for many other deaths across the US in the mid-1980s. Homicide detective Eugene Jacks was part of the policing team who hunted the killer for over 6 months before his dramatic arrest in September 1986.
He killed Sherry because she was dead, and she would never come out to the thing because she was dead. He killed those 2 little boys because their mother was dead, and they would never amount to anything because they wouldn't have blood. He killed Linda Jarman to get her caught. He says he killed Linda because she was a racist. I think he just killed people because he liked to kill people.
In a series of interviews with the killer, Eugene learned a lot about just how callous Daniel Siebert could be.
If you didn't know what kind of monster he
So,
was,
what do you want from me, O'Brien?
I'm glad she's alive, your wife.
Okay, what do you want?
I told you the infected, the freaks are mutating, some faster than others.
He didn't hate them.
We placed a tracking bracelet on one of them, so that we could track it and stop it periodically and draw blood samples. Check the progress of the
This
virus.
killer's story begins in Mattoon, Illinois,
Wandered into
a
militia
small
territory.
city in
Can't get
America's
close to it.
Yeah, no-fly zone, outpost without RPGs.
Exactly.
So these were the post-war years in the US.
Once you've tracked it down, I'm gonna need you to do something for
We
me.
have the idea of the
This
American
pack holds everything you
dream,
need to do
but
a
I
field
think when we
biopsy.
look
We need
behind
blood and
closed doors
tissue
of
samples.
his
Can you
family
handle that?
life, it was
Yeah, I can figure it
anything
out.
but that. There
By
are
the way,
reports of abuse from
nice
his
uniform,
father
Corporal.
towards his mother
Suits
and
you.
towards him.
Suck it.
Father was an aggressive man. He mistreated both Danny and his mother.
A man who is violent and abusive and controlling. And this is the role model of masculinity that Siebert grows up with. So I think that there is a real sense of shame that Siebert maintains throughout his life. And having been victimised, I think that Siebert was always trying to turn the tables and be the aggressor.
Nou, daar wil ik nog niet heen hoor.
Siebert's parents divorced in 1968, just a month before his 14th birthday. The young man's life began to spiral out of control.
He became addicted to
what else can you
drugs.
tell me about this freak you're tracking?
Got into prostitution. Himself acting as a prostitute.
I think there were several warning signs in Siebert's childhood and adolescence that point towards a very troubled individual. He's somebody who could not make relationships work with other people.
You know, to me, sounds like a whole lot of mumbo jumbo.
There was a feeling of rejection from the family environment, and it's this sense of isolation and later the choice to be isolated, which is something that's very concerning for me.
There was nothing about him that could be described as ordered. He was like a Catherine wheel, going round and round in every single direction, a firework.
Aged 18 and looking for some stability in his life, Siebert enrolled with the military in 1972.
Siebert's decision to try and join the Marines is a really, really interesting part of this case, because it's what that decision symbolises. The Marines symbolise this alpha male, this toughness, this kind of real American hero type persona. And I think Siebert wanted to try and live up to that.
Unfortunately, he couldn't deal with the order the Marines brought him. And quickly, well, within a year, went absent without leave.
After being dishonourably discharged from the Marines, Siebert was once again at a loose end. But the troubled young man had a hidden talent that soon began to flourish.
Well, Brian, I'm at the cave and I'm heading in. You guys gonna be ready?
Yes, we're standing by.
It was the only thing he was good at.
Freak
If you have a look
shit.
at some of his drawings, it was just, you know, I think he was just expressing his fantasies.
Hey, O'Brien, get an idea what took out your men. Am I walking into a horde here?
No idea. We never heard back from them. Remember, if you find them, we got people here who'd be grateful.
That changes everything. Yeah, I got it.
But
Good.
life with a charming young artist remained difficult.
Between 1972 and 1978, he was
Brian,
principally based in Los Angeles.
how many men are in
And there
here?
were a series of
How many did
offences,
you
drug
lose?
offences, some violence, charges of battery. It was a life lived on the edge, on the fringes of society, and on the fringes of the law.
By January 1979, 24-year-old Siebert was living in Las Vegas. He was in a relationship with a male partner. It was reportedly an abusive one that ended with him fatally stabbing his lover.
This homicide was a particularly vicious one because Siebert stabbed his partner 29 times. Now, for me, that means that he has made that decision 29 times to put the knife in again. This was somebody who knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and they chose to do it anyway.
Despite the viciousness of the slaying, at his subsequent trial, Siebert was charged with manslaughter, not murder.
Siebert insisted that it was self-defense. How it can
Jesus, O'Brien, what am I doing in here?
times is slightly beyond me. But it did seek to throw into doubt whether it was a premeditated murder, and therefore added strength to the argument.
So while I'm tracking down your pet freak, give me some of my jumbo. Tell me about the virus. I mean, something that I don't know.
For
those exposed, the virus infection rate is close to 100%.
And I think that was perhaps
In the first weeks, almost everyone under the age of 12 was killed.
A lot of violence has its roots in shame. I think Siebert was fundamentally ashamed of who he was.
Everyone over the age of 60 mostly were also killed. Their bodies just couldn't handle the rapid genetic mutations on a cellular level.
So I think
everyone else who was exposed becomes transformed as the genes mutate. The thing is, the virus is mutating at an exponential rate.
To 10 years in prison.
I know you keep
but
saying
after
that would have been
serving
mean.
just 2, he escaped while on work
The
detail
infected subject,
in
the
December
freaker
1981.
you're tracking down, isn't like any you've seen before. tracked and identified over 12 mutations.
While he's on the run, he kidnaps.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. You wouldn't believe some of the shit we've seen.
Escapes by jumping out of the moving car on the
Probably would. St. John out.
It is a remarkable escape, because in my own mind I'm not the slightest doubt that he intended to kill her.
Siebert was recaptured the following day in nearby Oakland and returned to prison. An extra year was added to his sentence, but in 1985 he was freed on parole on the proviso that he would return to court to face charges for the abduction and assault he committed during his brief escape. Due to attend court in San Francisco in December 1985, Siebert didn't turn up. His next known whereabouts were over 800 miles away in Tucson, Arizona, where he was found hitchhiking and heading east.
But now, Daniel Siebert is not calling himself Daniel Siebert, he's calling himself Daniel Spence. He's given a lift by a man called Donald Petrie, who is on his way to Alabama. Before the journey comes to an end, Donald has offered Spence a post as a volunteer.
Shit, he never saw what hit him.
At the Alabama Institute for the Deaf.
Well, Brian, I reached your guy and, yeah, he's dead. ID says G. Hernandez.
It's actually a community of its own.
How did it happen?
Something you might say.
I'm not a coroner, O'Brien. How the hell do I know? Something tore him apart. This freak I'm tracking. Is there something you haven't told me?
Institute for those with deafness and blindness.
Leaving his troubles in California far behind him, Siebert settled down in Talladega, Alabama in January 1986.
Move an arm or something if you can hear me.
IDB, he had a new identity and a new community of friends.
Just gonna find a way over there.
After he arrived here, it could be a lot of accomplished
How do I
artist.
get to him?
And he was asked to do a mural at AIDB, which he did. And that's one of the reasons he stayed here for a while, was doing that mural. Once again, he hid in plain sight. The affable art volunteer, friend of Donald's, welcomed in the Institute, and then, and it's almost heartbreaking, he meets Sherry Ann Weathers, a 24-year-old deaf mother of two small boys, and they form a relationship.
A new circle of friends had welcomed 31-year-old Daniel Siebert into their lives with open arms. But they had no idea they'd allowed a brutal killer into their close-knit community. Siebert spent much of his time at the apartment of his new girlfriend, 24-year-old Sherry Weathers. By the 24th of February, Sherry, a single mother of two, hadn't turned up at the school for almost a week. Her concerned friends contacted the authorities.
In February 1986, the police department received a call for a welfare check at Sunrise Apartments in Talladega. Police were dispatched. Officer Tom Byerman was the first on the scene. When he entered Sherry Weathers' apartment, he discovered the bodies of Sherry Weathers and two boys.
Get to him.
He immediately backed out, locked the door, and called for investigation.
There's the last one.
Eugene was joined on the case by an investigator from the district attorney's office, Dennis Surratt.
We arrived at the apartments, and the police department had already had the scene roped off. And we met the other investigators, went into the apartment, and as you walk into the room, there's a bedroom, and then there's a living room, and there's a kitchen. And right in the center of the living room and kitchen, you see three bodies.
It's quite horrible. I haven't forgotten it after all these years. One of the next door neighbors had heard the two little boys playing in a tub. He got them out of the bed. He strangled the two little boys.
He actually woke them up because they were in bed asleep. He wanted them to know that they were being killed. He wanted them to feel that fear.
And he stacked their bodies on top of the body.
It looked like a broken cross. That's my first impression.
Sherry Weathers and her two sons, 5-year-old Chad and 4-year-old Joseph, had been strangled to death 5 days earlier on the 19th of February. It was a sickening scene, even for seasoned detectives. But the team knew they needed to stay professional and not let their emotions get in the way of their police work.
You know the minute you walk into that scene, you know this is a death penalty case. And you know things have to be done differently. Everything has to be perfect, everything has to be exact, everything has to be documented. I's dotted, T's crossed, because you know where this is headed to. Because you know a murder of two or more is going to be a death penalty case. And then the emotional part hits you. You know, this is a young mother. This is two young children and their lives ahead of them. What kind of person would do this? I mean, it's emotionally hit you. That's the second thing. After reality is what you got. Then emotionally, you're hit, you know, especially if you have children.
When you see something like that, you can't help but think about your own child. This could happen to my child, too. It's something that you just don't forget about.
Just as the two investigators were getting to grips with their harrowing day, some more worrying news came in.
We're in the middle of processing that scene. We've been there probably 2 or 3 hours processing the scene for us. And then we were notified that Linda Jarman, who was a friend of Sherry Weathers, she did not show up for classes that day.
She lived in an adjoining apartment, not to this building, but to the next building. So Dennis and I went to her apartment, and we discovered her on the bed in the bedroom, and she'd been strangled.
33-year-old Linda Jarman, a deaf teacher at the same institute where Sherry was a student, had been murdered in cold blood.
He used to sob and just strangle her in her own bed. Of course, most people don't know what a VCR is these days, but back in those days, VCR was worth some money, so he stole her VCR in order to get money to travel further.
Linda Jarman's cream-coloured car was also missing. The team would report their findings to former Talladega County District Attorney Robert Rumsey.
The evidence would show that after he strangled Sherry and Chad and Joey, that he went to Linda Jarman's apartment, telling her that he had a fight with Sherry and could he sleep on her couch. When she went back to bed and went to sleep, then he went in and he strangled her to get her car to leave.
After speaking to acquaintances and colleagues of Sherry and Linda, the detectives soon had a number one suspect who they discovered had been using
He's still alive. Hold on. Hey, Cooper. Hey. Right here. We're gonna get you out of here.
We started running in and find out that they was everything. And just determined that his name is actually Daniel Siebert.
Once we developed another suspect and got his true identity,
His legs are broken.
Hold on, stay with him. I'm sending in another team. No. Too quickly became the prime suspect because Daniel Spence wasn't here, and the car was gone.
Get Chen in here now.
As the duo headed to Siebert's apartment building, they soon discovered there was another potential victim.
So we get an opportunity.
You told me that a freak did all
There's
of this.
no answer at the door. A neighbor comes out and says, "Why are you here?"
Cooper, are you there?
That's what he's going to do. I got to tell you, my girlfriend's been sick.
I can't believe it. I thought I'd never get you home.
We're going to
get you out of here.
Do
you hear me?
I don't know if she's ever connected to this lady. Here's Mr. Siebert. Brian. Friends. Well, you need to go to the police department and file a report.
In the space of 24 hours, 4 people had been found dead and another was missing. The investigators needed to find Daniel Siebert fast. And they soon had word from authorities over 350 miles north of Talladega.
We received information from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, that they had located Dennis Jarman's car right off the interstate in Elizabethtown. That's when Dennis and I left here to go there and process the car.
Guys in the lab nicknamed it the Reacher.
Reacher. What is it? Long arms, claws, what?
No, it's just fast. We've clocked it moving 40 miles an hour. Yeah, it's strong. You should have warned me. This isn't your fight.
It is now, said John.
Without cigarettes and smokes and without chewing gum and we would cover photographs of women and children, women's cosmetics.
There were also some quite chilling items. Of the weather survey. I think this emphasis on those victims is so significant in this case. This young mother and her two children seem to have quite a lot of importance for Steve.
Explosions.
I think that he didn't feel they deserved to be alive. These boys were happy. They were loved and cared for by their mother. I think he felt a real sense of envy and resentment. I think those three murders which were most proud of.
Despite being sure Seabird was responsible for at least 4 murders, the dangerous killer remained undetected.
Dennis and Eugene, both of them are excellent processors. They go and they're in Kentucky for quite a while. So they were up there several days and in the wind.
In Linda's car, Dennis had recovered an address book belonging to 31-year-old Seabird, which would eventually prove to be an important find.
I had one investigator. Her main job, I'd say, in this investigation was to stay in contact with known associates of Seabird. And she had built a rapport with the girlfriend that Seabird out there. And she promised that if she heard from him, she would call him.
With every day that passed, the investigators knew
Maybe these Negro soldiers had some ammo.
As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Seabird's location remained a mystery. The investigators desperately searched in vain. But in reality, he was over 900 miles from Talladega, Alabama, in New Jersey, and was about to claim another victim, 57-year-old tour guide Beatrice McDougal.
Daniel Seabird was staying in March 8, 1986. Well, my room was a tour guide. So I was fixing up the hospitality room.
He would have used fairly quickly that she's a tour guide, so she's likely to have some cash on her.
Seabird was determined to get his hands on Beatrice's money by any means necessary.
And he goes in there and kills her. We don't know at that point that it's secret, but he's off and in the wind, and we ain't got a clue where he is after that. He just drops off the radar.
Seabird had stabbed Beatrice twice in the stomach and strangled her to death in an opportunistic attack.
I think that there is just no regard for the rights or feelings of the people. It's all about him. He needs money at every time because he's on the run. He also wants to kill any potential witness to this crime of theft. So her life was just sitting back.
These guys off.
As Seabird remained undetected, the bad news continued for investigators in Alabama. On the 30th of March 1986, another victim of the 31-year-old artist arrested for the altercation, he used a stolen social security card of murdered 5-year-old Chad Weathers as identification. This meant that no one had made the link between Siebert and any of the murders.
So during the time that Siebert was on the run, he actually used the identities of Sherry Weathers' two boys to gain new identification. And at this point in time, it was relatively easy to do that, to use a child's identity to get a social security number. But I think that the significance of this is more than just a practicality. I think there is something much more meaningful going on here. By possessing these children's names, by presenting yourself as them, you are owning them, you are possessing them, they are yours, and it's that extension of control over your victims.
After serving his time for the assault, Siebert was in police custody again in June 1986, this time in Virginia.
Those are my men. How did you or anyone else tell me?
Fly around in kilo, well above shit. Crawl back in as well. Calls you underground bunker, whatever the fuck. You have no idea what it's like out here. When it takes shit. Oh, you know those men, Cooper? The others had no idea what they were walking into.
So he was arrested for
Didn't you?
Yeah, being in possession of the stolen car. He was using the identity of using the Social Security.
Maybe this time you'll get on top of it.
He made mine, and he was gone.
Siebert was incredibly cunning, incredibly manipulative. I think he was aware of the fact that law enforcement wasn't particularly well joined up in terms of interstate communication and sharing of information at this time, and I think he truly did take advantage of that.
In August, Siebert was yet again in another state, Maryland. He assaulted a woman in Baltimore, but wasn't captured by the police. He then headed back west towards Nashville, Tennessee. The investigators in Alabama still had no idea where he was, but a breakthrough was on the horizon. Detectives who'd reached out to people listed in Siebert's address book had been contacted by one of his ex-girlfriends in Nevada. She had news that would finally crack the case.
Damn it! We're on patrol!
He says that she had just spoken with Danny Siebert on the phone, and he told him what time it was where he was at. And she could hear thunder, and it was raining. So the investigator came and then told the rest of us about the call, and that it was raining at that particular time.
With very little information, the investigators tried to trace the source of Siebert's call.
So it was not easy to trace the call, but they told us if we had any idea where he was, it'd make it a lot easier. Otherwise, it'd take 3 weeks to a month to trace it. I told the investigator to go call the National Weather Service, find out who was raining in that time zone. It was raining too, so that was it for that time. We were able to use that information and trace the telephone call to Hurricane Mills in Tennessee to a little convenience store restaurant there.
It was a stunning revelation. Detectives could now pinpoint Siebert to the small community of Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, 70 miles west of Nashville.
I called the district attorney. He said, okay, I'm coming with you. Spent 6 months and nobody's telling how many trips, not me, but how many trips with the investigators and stuff had gone down every little they could come up with. It really had proved fruitless. But this is a live hit now. So we all loaded up 10 cars, headed to Tennessee. I called TBI, which is Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. This is what we got going on. We kind of traced to this location and we're gonna do that way.
After 6.5 months of searching for Siebert, the anticipation of his arrest was at the forefront of the detectives' minds.
The journey up there was almost like waiting for your birthday party. We were all extremely excited.
Well, by the time we got there,
St. John out.
We decided not to do anything but send one investigator in there to see if they could see anything to the search first, because you had this service station where the call was from, And then you had a restaurant up here, and then you had another filling station, a restaurant up here. So one investigator went in, kind of knew the owner, and said, yeah, he's been painting some signs for me. And he'll be in here in the morning to collect his check.
It would be a sleepless night for the arresting officers.
Everybody's upbeat. Everybody's tired, but everybody's upbeat. And I don't think a single one of us took a nap that night out there on the road, because we were just on a roadway, waiting for morning.
The following morning, the 5th of September 1986, the team were ready to pounce as dawn broke over Hurricane Mills.
It's hard to describe what it was like sitting there waiting for him to come around the building. But I'd always wondered if I'd recognize him when I saw him. When he rounded the corner of that building, there was no doubt in my mind, that's him. As soon as he went in the door, Dennis and I were out the door. We went in behind him. He wasn't there. Scared us to death. We just looked at the clerk, where's he? And she pointed to the restaurant. And we went in on TBI, and the captain went in and arrested him in the men's room. His only question to us was, how'd y'all find me?
You're mine now.
6 weapons. We seized his backpack. We found where he was.
Come on! You're not gonna make this easy on me, are you?
Finally, Daniel Seabird was in police custody. He will never be free again. But the job was far from done.
Making this harder!
Detectives are certain
Let him get away, Deej.
for the murders of 5 people in the small community. Linda Odom, Linda Jarman, Sherry Weathers, and
fik toch op, man.
Investigators extracted
Stop on the fucking bike.
But they were hoping an interview with
Get on the fucking bike.
would uncover even more secrets.
It was tense. For me. Fuck you, man. This was the end of a long,
Let him get away, Deej.
Seaman told Eugene about the 5 murders he committed on the 19th of February 1986, and also confessed to the killing of Beatrice McDougal in Atlantic City on the 8th of March. He showed no remorse for any of the murders.
He wasn't concerned at all. Showed no emotion whatsoever. Never shed a tear. You could tell there was no concern in him about what he had done. And if we had released him right there, he'd have done it again in a few days. Because he had no remorse whatsoever.
Curry tells me he was one of our best riders.
People want to know how he felt about his death. He didn't feel about his death.
How would you see about that? Say John out.
He had no feeling for anyone. I don't know that he really felt anything about himself, to be honest with you. He had no feelings.
I think he was a psychopath. I think he demonstrated every normal, or if you can use the word normal when you apply to a psychopath, every possible psychopathic tendency. An utter lack of remorse, an utter lack of conscience, an utter lack of empathy with other people. They were simply objects.
Seabird also confessed to another murder that predated any of the other 6, whilst he was lodging with Donald Hendren in Alabama.
It's early February 1986.
Ja, dan
Donald
stapt hij
Hendren's
daaruit.
asleep.
Dat is zo achterlijk.
Seabird gets into bed and borrows Donald's car and picks up a girl called Cheryl Evans. She's working as a prostitute in Birmingham and Alabama.
He kidnapped her, robbed her, and killed her, and carried her body to Apache.
Colonel Hasbach.
Dumped it in a roadside garbage. And just returned the car right back to the body.
Oh, come on! You're not gonna make this easy on me, are you?
There's still more. We have uncovered a telling piece of evidence when searching Seabird's home.
He gets quiet. I don't know.
Kan niet schieten. Kom uitstaat.
I'm gonna run you down!
Shit. Engine crapped out.
This is basically
Let him get away, Deej.
commemoration of the murders
Come
that
on.
he committed. I think every time he looked at that map, he would have felt powerful. He would have
Kan mijn engine helemaal niet doen. Ja.
Seabird confessed to killing 3 sex workers in Nevada and California in late 1985.
That he's targeted sex workers is really significant for me because he's preying upon these women's vulnerabilities. He's well aware that society does not value these individuals as much as it values others, and therefore he has access to them, he has the opportunity to harm them.
He was also indicted for the murder of Bill.
How you doing, buddy, huh?
But never went
Looks like
to
you're
trial
having
for
a
this.
chaotic day? Yeah, just the way you like it?
As many as 13 murders, detectives could only link 10 victims to the 32-year-old. But for his impending trials, Seabird would only be indicted
Don't matter much
for
to me
the
one way or
murders
the
of
other.
the 5 that had been thoroughly investigated in Alabama.
Colonel? Oh, God, I'm transmitting the coordinates now.
Linda Jarman was a capital case because it was murder during commission of robbery or theft of getting a car. Sherry Weathers, Chad, and Joey was a capital case because it was murder of 2 or more people pursuant to a common plan, scheme, or design. Linda Odom was not a capital case. He pled guilty to Linda Odom after all of this life sentence.
During 3 trials over the course of 5 months between March and August 1987, Seabird was found guilty of all 5 murders and sentenced to death twice.
I've probably tried 30 death penalty cases or more, but this one is just the magnitude of it and what makes another human being go do something like this. I mean, you got a woman that's deaf that he's intimate with, a 4 and 5-year-old who he wakes up from their sleep to strangle, goes to another deaf woman and kills her just to get a car to get out of there. I mean, just thinking about it, it'll be there on a deathbed.
I think the sentences that he received were appropriate. I think he committed the most serious of crimes, so that deserves the most serious of sentence. But I think if we were to ask his victims' families, they're not going to have their loved ones brought back. I think they have achieved some sense of justice, but at the same time I think they were asking a lot of questions as to how this man had slipped off the radar of the authorities. This man had committed a homicide in 1979 and he went on to commit more, so could more have been done to prevent that?
I think one of the things that always moves me most about this story is that when he was asked about the killing of Sherry Ann and the boys, he said Sherry didn't have anything to say, Joey didn't have anything to say, Chad didn't have anything to say, and I don't have anything to say. If there's anything that could be more heartless, more utterly revolting, more depraved than that remark, I have yet to hear it. And this is a man who snuffed out the life of a deaf 24-year-old mother and her 2 children aged 5 and 4. It is utterly monstrous.
In August 1987, Daniel Seabird began his death row sentence. For 18 months, the case had consumed the investigators who had worked on it. Now they could breathe a sigh of relief.
I still think about those 2 little boys. And always will, I'm sure. I'm sure Dennis and other investigators do too, because they all had children too.
I don't know what it is, but I know he's a psychotic killer. And had he not been taken in Tennessee, that's what's so outstanding about the police work. Had he not been taken in Tennessee, I don't know whether it would have been Arkansas, Oklahoma, Nevada, Utah, or California, but somebody else would have died. And he wasn't through.
After numerous unsuccessful appeals throughout the years, 53-year-old Siebert remained on death row for almost 21 years.
On April 22nd, 2008, Daniel Siebert died. Not from lethal injection, from pancreatic cancer. Natural causes. In the end, he escaped the death penalty.
I mean, this was a personal crime. This is not something that you're standing 30 feet away and shoot somebody. This is something you put your hands around their neck and choke the life out of. That's bad. Think about that. It takes anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes to do that to someone. And you're sitting there and you got your hands around their neck and you're taking the life from them. You got to be enjoying that. Otherwise, you would get that way. And if you're enjoying something like that, man, you are bad. And I just wish we had got to that point. I think we felt we cheated for that.
Daniel Siebert was linked to at least 10 murders and was convicted of 5. But he never tried to justify his reason for killing people.
For me, what makes Siebert one of the world's most evil killers is the degree of manipulativeness that he was able to exercise. He was able to come across as an individual with feelings, as an individual who cared about others, but those feelings were not genuine at all. They were simply a performance.
He was an absolute monster. He was a horrible person. He really was. And that's what comes to mind anytime anyone mentions his name. He's a monster.
Daniel Siebert was a callous killer who felt no remorse. To choke the life out of 2 children simply because he felt they would never amount to much is a cold-blooded act that cannot be forgiven. We may never know exactly how many lives he took, but Siebert's death means he can no longer harm anyone and will forever be remembered as one of the world's most evil killers.
A shooter takes deadly aim at the residents of a small Georgia town. Police and the FBI begin a desperate search to find the killer. They struggle to make sense of the evidence as the body count climbs.
I got a flamethrower.
All in an attempt to stop this murderer before he puts his next victim in his sights.
The small town. 2 people were killed, 2 others were critically wounded. At first, the shootings seemed targeted. Then they seemed random. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As the body count climbed, the killer taunted law enforcement with mysterious names. The shooter would continue to kill until he was dead or behind bars.
East Point, Georgia is just 7 miles south of there.
Kut, dat is mijn motor weer kapot.
East Point averages 6. March 1st, 2001. A man is concerned about his mother. He arrives at her house to see if she's okay. He normally speaks to his mother by phone every day, but this day she did not answer his calls. Then he sees signs of foul play that lead to his mother's car. He makes a move at his car. Minutes later, East Point Police and Lieutenant Russell Poppett begin a homicide investigation.
We discovered the victim was a female
That's right. Finished bringing out this infestation zone. I guess I'll come back here and finish burning this infestation zone later.
Police can already rule out one reason why the victim was murdered.
Money.
It's always in any kind of crime, you try to figure out the motive. Obviously, the car was still there as well as the pocketbook. So we didn't think at the time that...
Colonel, reporting in. Did the patrol get the prisoner?
Corporal, I'm afraid not. They went to retrieve him.
Detectives identify the victim as Pamela Clark.
Poison.
They also find a
himself. We're not sure how.
Victim
sorry, sir.
was a probation officer in the state of Georgia, Department of Corrections, and she supervised probationers.
Yes, sir. St. John out.
Since they have limited investigative resources, East Point Police request the FBI and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to assist at the crime scene. FBI Special Agent Pete McFarlane is on a task force that assists local police departments with forensic analysis.
A lot of local police departments did not have the equipment such as Luma lights. We actually process vehicles for latent fingerprints, and we process items that we picked up for latent fingerprints.
Agent McFarlane finds signs Pamela Clark was shot at almost point-blank range.
You could see where the person was shot right through the window. The glass had actually impaled the victim's face, so it was very close. I guess you could say it was an execution.
The killer was both brutal and careful. East Point Police Detective Bobby Gray finds no bullet shell casings at the scene, despite multiple shots being fired.
Hey, Sergeant.
No shell casings could mean that there was a revolver. Until we know differently, we're going to assume that the person picked him up or he was using the revolver.
Deke, Corporal.
Police believe the killer premeditated the murder because of the lack of evidence.
There was no fingerprints left at the scene. It was a very sterile scene.
Detectives want to know who would want Pamela Clark dead. For answers, they turn to the victim's son.
Corporal in command.
Sarge, good to see
you.
you.
Mentioned trouble with anyone, including her probationers. To investigators, it seems that the fatal
Okay, now that's more like
was
it.
a random attack.
Oh, yeah. Upgrade the hell out of that thing, right?
At night, detectives go door to door throughout the
Yeah, gonna make me a quadrillionaire, right?
They're searching for anyone who saw anything suspicious in the last 24 hours. They find only one witness. The previous night, she heard noises that could have been gunshots. Then she saw someone calmly walking away.
Okay.
The witness said she saw a black male
Hey,
about
Corporal
6
St.
feet
John.
tall.
I can catch
She's
you
looking at a
later.
distance from about 40 yards, so she can only tell
Corporal
that he
St.
had
John.
a low haircut.
Sergeant,
About 6
how's
feet
life in the
tall,
races?
Of average build. There's not much
This is
light. That's all she could come up
Just
with.
this one? Okay. One ear. Good.
Unfortunately, the
So,
witness
just
is
this
unsure
one
she
ear then?
recognized the man as she
Okay.
saw him again.
Things must be slow out there, huh? This it?
The medical
Just
examiner
this
confirmed
one?
several findings investigators made at
Okay.
the crime scene.
One ear.
Pamela Clark was murdered 24 hours before her body was discovered. The medical examiner identifies 4
So,
bullet
just this one ear then?
3 to the left side of the
Okay.
torso and 1 near the right
Things
armpit.
must be slow out there, huh?
The tight
This
cleavage
it?
of the 3
That's all I
wounds
got.
is consistent with police theories
Corporal St.
that the
John,
killer
you take
shot
care
the
now.
victim at close range. Police get their first clues about the murder weapon when the
You need to
medical
go upstairs.
examiner removes
You
3
need to go
.40 caliber
upstairs.
bullets from the body. Although 3 bullets are recovered,
days ago.
the victim had
What's
4
that, man?
gunshot wounds. Investigators recover the 4th bullet from the passenger seat of the victim's car. It's also 40 caliber. Agents find the vehicle unusually cluttered with junk mail, bills, and other letters. The victim's son said his mother usually sorted her mail in the car after she picked it up from her mailbox. Agents also note a few other items.
I thought she may have had some children in the car because there were some wrappers also in the vehicle.
Based on the evidence recovered from the car, the autopsy, and witness interviews,
Males,
detectives
mannen
put
maakt niet
together a
uit, maar
murder
geen vrouwen
scenario
en
that
kinderen.
paints a picture
Ja,
of a
trouwens
ruthless,
wel. Mijn ex-vriendin
calculating
wel. Die
assailant.
moet ook dood. Die mag ook gewoon gewurgd worden.
Investigators suspect the killer was lying
En
in
dan nog
wait
even
as
seks
Pamela
hebben
Clark
daarna.
arrived
Als
home
dat
on
zo
the
de
evening of
leven
February
uitkomt.
28, 2001.
Alleen maar om te
about
laten zien hoe
7:30
sick
p.m.
fuck ik ben, snap je?
It seems
Eerst
he was
wurgen,
familiar with his
daarna
victim's
nog een keer
routine as
seks
she
hebben.
arrived home from work. There he'd have a captive target as she sorted her mail.
Kijk,
detectives believe the killer either picked up all the .40 caliber shell casings or had some other way of containing them as he fired. Then he left Pamela Clark to die.
Ja, dat zou
Police
allemaal
have a
kapot
theory
gaan,
on how the
die
victim was murdered, but they have no
Lana
suspects
Rosie, doe eens
and
even
the
flink
killer on the
even
loose.
in de troot vakken.
We have an extreme whodunit. We have bullets, we have a car, and we have a body. And that's about all we have.
With so little to go on, it will be difficult to find justice for the murdered probation officer.
What the fuck was that?
East Point, Georgia police and the FBI have a killer on the loose.
Ja.
A killer who
Gewoon
murdered
wurgen
probation officer
en dan nog
Pamela
even seks
Clark.
hebben.
They have no leads and no suspects. They
Maar niet
only
in de
know the killer
klaarkomen, hè,
approached
want
her
dan
while
hebben ze
she
die
sat in
sporen.
her car and shot her 4 times at close range with a
Geen
40
DNA
caliber
achterlaten.
handgun.
Je geeft met een waterpistool met chloor.
Investigators like East Point Police Lieutenant
Yeah,
Russell
okay,
Popham
look at
try
me.
to understand why someone would want Pamela Clark dead.
There's an old saying that if you can establish the motive, you can solve the crime. We immediately
Er is geen motief, dat doe ik
her
gewoon voor de
immediate
gezelligheid.
family, her contacts, as well as her job as a state probation officer.
Oh, voor de gezelligheid doen we
The
dat.
victim's son said she never mentioned having any enemies.
Ik hoef geen geld te pakken, dat heb ik helemaal niet nodig. Dat laat ik allemaal liggen.
Detectives focus on the victim's job as a probation officer, where she worked with dangerous criminals on a daily basis. The probation officer has the power to send a violent criminal back to jail.
Hoe komen we daar beneden dan?
Police searched the victim's office to examine her case files.
She had a typical caseload of anywhere from 70 to 100 probationers.
Ik ken niet verder naar beneden. Kut.
So we looked to see if there was anybody on her probation list that maybe she was about to try and revoke the probation. This took about 15 days to go through the list.
Detectives questioned each of Pamela Clark's probationers to find out where they were on the night she was killed.
Guys.
Most of them are saddened to hear of her murder.
What we found on interviewing her probationers is that she was a well-liked person.
Hey, man, how'd you do?
A person, almost a mother figure. We heard that from several people that had committed some violent crimes. And they actually had her as a probation
Brother,
officer.
you a lifesaver, dude.
Right on.
Thank you.
You need anything else, Weaver? Weaver, you need...
But as police scour hundreds of case files, they discover a
Hey,
probation
Corporal St. John, you one of the good ones, man.
and the opportunity
Brother from
to
another
study
mother.
their habits.
We were able to find one person that she was potentially going to revoke her or ask for his probation to be revoked. Had failed a drug test. And this person actually lived in her neighborhood.
The probationer's name is
Sample
Thomas
of water
Moulton.
moet ik hebben, hier, daar. Ik heb al heel veel hordes weggehaald. Zie je,
Detectives
er
put
is
a
al heel veel
mugshot
weg.
of Moulton into a photo lineup.
Maar ik ben nog niet
They
klaar.
show it to the witness who saw a man walking away from the crime scene on the night of the murder. The witness identifies Thomas Moulton as the man she saw. With the positive ID, it seems investigators may have an open and shut case. March 15th, 2001.
Oh,
2 weeks after Pamela Clark was
Deacon,
burned down.
Corporal St. John. Good to see you, man.
Police have an arrest and search
Sarge.
warrant for Moulton.
Shut the fuck up, man.
Corporal Deacon St. John.
Sergeant, how's it going?
During their search of Moulton's house, investigators uncover a jacket like the one the witness saw on the night
Yeah,
of the
gonna make
murder.
me a quadrillionaire, right?
Police also make a disturbing find.
He had a box of 9mm bullets in his room, and we knew, however, that the bullets used were .40 caliber. But again, the stationer had bullets when he shouldn't have.
Huh? Ah, okay. Hey, Corporal St. John. I'll catch you later.
Moet ik weer heel
Prove or that this person did it.
Thomas Moulton submits to a polygraph test and agrees to be questioned without a lawyer present.
Did you kill Pamela Clark? No.
Under questioning, Moulton denies any involvement in Pamela Clark's murder.
Use the pad. And also
Oké, even kijken, wat zegt hij?
Everybody use that pad.
Nee, ik ben niet gek, ik ben
When
gewoon
investigators press
strange.
Moulton for an alibi, he claims he can't
Oh,
remember
deze
where
hebben
he
we ook nog
was
niet
on the night of Pamela Clark's murder.
Nero moet daarheen, man. Dat is best wel ver. Maar ja. Ik heb er
Throughout
eigenlijk
the
helemaal geen zin
interview,
meer in. Ik kan
the
niet eruit
polygraph
zetten.
analyst detects
Corporal is a good man.
Wauw, die...
Police later examine Moulton's telephone records. They discover Moulton was on the phone talking to his girlfriend during the time Pamela Clark was murdered. Detectives clear Moulton as a suspect. They've hit a dead end in their investigation.
Ja, je hoeft geen advocaat te halen als je schuldig bent.
Killer is still on the loose.
Daarom werd ik ook altijd vrijgesproken. Ik nam nog geen advocaat mee naar de rechter, man. Dat heb ik helemaal niet nodig.
April
Ben ik
8,
schuldig?
2001, over a month after Pamela Clark
Totdat ik het tegendeel bewezen is. En dan ontken ik nog. Ik heb alleen meer straf. Als het zeker is.
Few days of spring, but when the doors open, the windows open.
A few miles from Pamela Clark's home, a retiree named Chuck Boiler hears someone approach.
Wow.
The bullet shatters the man's arm and rips into his chest.
Oh, dat moet veel pijn hebben, hoor.
He tries to fight back, but he's rapidly losing blood. The gunman lingers. Then disappears into the night. East Point Police Lieutenant Russell Popham tries to get a description of the assailant.
Ja, ik kan geen tijd om te praten. Hij sterft. Het is in een bos geraakt.
Tell if it's a man or a woman, race of the person or anything. We asked them who would have did this to you. Did they ask for anything? Did they try to rob you or anything like that? He said, no, I just went to the door and I was shot through the door.
Oh, dat is een deur.
Detectives find evidence confirming the victim was shot at almost point-blank range.
We could actually see the gunpowder residue around the screen, so we knew, again, this was up close and personal. And so it appeared that he was targeted.
Oh!
Police recover a shell casing.
meters. Damn it, I should have been watching for him.
Oh.
It's 40 caliber. Then detectives find it. It's an ominous note that indicates I was locked up for 6 weeks. Someone was paid.
Bitch, omdraaien, gewoon naaien.
Signed in yellow highlighter. The
Hoek
gunman
omlaag,
calls
gewoon
himself
naaien, die bitch.
Jack.
Kuthoed.
As East Point police try to make sense of the note, they have no idea that more violence is being unleashed just a few miles away. Less than an hour after Chuck Boiler was shot, East Point police will have a new murder on their hands.
Good.
In the spring of 2001, police in East Point, Georgia are investigating the murder of probation officer Pamela Clark. They have no suspects. Over a month later, a gunman shoots Chuck Boiler point blank, shattering his arm. Police find a note left by the shooter in which he calls himself Jack. Less than an hour after he was shot, a man approaches another house in East Point.
Poison ivy. Poison oak.
The man isn't a shooter, he's a victim. East Point Emergency Services race to their second shooting of the night. Police learn the victim's name is Andrew Wilson, a janitor at a local hospital.
Come on!
More bounties. Find answers down the street. A car idles with no one inside. Police run the registration and learn the vehicle belongs to the victim. Investigators find bullet holes in the vehicle that indicate Wilson was shot in his car as he pulled up to the intersection. The fatal bullet likely passed through the driver's side rear window, through the back of the driver's side seat, and into the victim's back. After Wilson was shot, detectives believe he got out of his car and desperately searched the neighborhood for help. Police recover 5 shell casings from the scene. They're all 40 caliber. Just like the casing recovered an hour earlier in front of Chuck Boiler's house. But the fact that 40 caliber weapons were used in both crimes is not necessarily linked to the shooting.
Primary murder weapon that's used around here is a 9mm, as the 40 caliber's gotten more popular. We see a lot of 40 caliber crime scenes.
Then police find undeniable evidence the 2 shootings are related. The city of East Point has a serial shooter on the loose. He calls himself Jack. East Point police canvass the neighborhood for witnesses. They find a woman who saw a black male loitering in the area before the shooting.
She saw that this man standing there, he was pacing back and forth. And she watched him for 10 or 15 minutes, and she said, "This is not right."
Hello, squatter camp. Sons of bitches have been setting up ambushes around here, yeah? Okay, this pretty much looks like a marsh. Let's go look.
Through the window, she saw a car approach the intersection. Saw the man's face. She got a good look at his vehicle.
She'd seen a late model American car. She was very adamant and detailed about it. And that was one thing that we really believed her, that she knew what type of car it was.
The witness was unable to see the car's license plate number.
Here's more. Some more hemlock, more hemlock, need more hemlock. Oh, God damn it. She was right. Criers. Oh, damn
In a
it.
single night,
Crows.
Jack has murdered one man
Never gonna leave
and
me alone
seriously wounded
if I don't burn
another.
other nests. Just a few
Police
more.
now have 2 bodies on their
I
hands,
gotta find
and every reason to expect there will be more. The city of East Point, Georgia, has a serial shooter on the loose. In a single night, the gunman wounded one man and killed another. Investigators found notes left by the shooter at both crime scenes. They were signed in yellow highlighter, Jack. East Point Police and Detective Bobby Gray fear the shooter will strike again.
The frustrating thing about this investigation is we didn't know who, we didn't know why, and we didn't know who would be next.
4 days later, on April 12, 2001, a shadowy figure approaches another house in East Point. A woman is unaware she's a target. She doesn't hear the shot. The TV is her only clue something is wrong. Then she spots a bullet hole and calls 911. East Point Police respond to the latest shooting.
Bunch of murdering assholes. Can't let any of them get out of here alive.
Targeted the woman and hit the TV by mistake. She's lucky to be alive.
I did, yeah. I was sitting there watching TV and I was talking about the That's all I can remember. I'm sure.
If it wasn't for the TV being in front of the window, the person watching the TV would have been dead. The bullet went through the window.
How many of you are left, huh?
It went through the back of the TV, and fortunately, it lodged inside the TV.
What do you think now, huh? Somebody shoots back. How do you like that?
A chilling note that supports their theory and threatens many more victims.
There we go.
It reads, "Better count your body bags."
We knew that this person wasn't going to stop. We're going to have more victims. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how many.
Police have no doubt as to who did the shooting. The killer, who calls himself Jack. Hours later, crime scene technicians recover a bullet from the woman's TV set. It's .40 caliber, consistent with Jack's MO. Point detectives need to stop Jack before he makes good on his threat to fill body bags with more victims.
Son of a bitch.
He appealed to other police agencies and the FBI for help. FBI Special Agent Pete McFarlane examines the evidence. He recognizes the notes. He found one when he processed the car of murdered probation officer Pamela Clark. At first he thought the note was just a child's scribbling. But now it ties Pamela Clark's murder to the shooting spree.
Eureka. That's the word you want to use, Eureka. There's a connect here. When you started connecting all of them together, it's very similar, handwriting or block writing, all done with a highlighter. It was almost like this person was trying to say, well, I'm a serial killer. I'm out there shooting people just for no reason at all.
The similarities between the notes point to a killer that is methodical, calculated, and consistent. Jack wrote each note on a half a sheet of standard white paper. Jack tore each note by hand, resulting in ragged edges. And Jack signed each note with either an orange or a yellow highlighter. Detectives believe one note contains a possible motive.
6 mensen.
So investigators scour records for anyone recently jailed for that period of time named Jack. They find no viable suspects. Jack and his true motive remain a mystery.
We as investigators had 4 crime scenes, but we had nothing. We had no suspects, we had nobody.
Police examined the victims' backgrounds, searching for any link between them that could show a pattern in the shootings.
We even went as far as to the individuals today have their oil changed at the same place. You know, their automotive work is done at the same place. Things like that. I mean, we looked into every possible avenue to connect them, to disprove that it was random.
The only link police find is that all the victims live within the borders of the same city.
Everything was centered in East Point, as opposed to the shooter going to College Park.
I saw something.
Right next door, East Point, or even back to Atlanta, or East Point, or some other jurisdiction in close proximity to East Point. Everything was centered right in East Point.
Detectives know that when the killer strikes again, it will be in East Point. Anyone within city limits could be a target. Police take unprecedented measures to warn the public. They use a computer system to dial every phone number in East Point. Anyone who picks up the phone hears a message warning about a killer on the loose. The taped message tells the public to call police if they see anything even slightly suspicious. It puts the entire city on edge. East Point police work around the clock, canceling leave and beefing up patrols to catch Jack before he strikes again. But they're up against a gunman who kills at a time and place of his choosing.
We felt helpless. We're here to protect the citizens of East Point, and we're here to help. And unfortunately, you don't know when the next shooting is going to happen. You don't know who's going to be the victim. You don't know why they're going to be a victim.
Investigators fear they're playing a grim waiting game with Jack.
Is that it? Is that all you got? Yeah, that's what I thought. Next time you set up an ambush, don't pick on the wrong guy.
I'll never forget this. He said, you probably just want to sit back and wait for an unknown to happen.
Just gotta
That's not really what you want to hear.
12 days later, on April 24th, 2001, the wait is over. At 1:30 a.m., Rosa Lewis pulls up to her East Point apartment. She's Jack's 5th victim. East Point, Georgia, April 24th, 2001 at 1:30 a.m. Rosa Lewis has been shot in her car as she pulled up to her apartment. She's the latest victim in a series of random shootings that have left 2 people dead.
Yes, here it is.
She fights to avoid becoming the 3rd. Despite 4 bullets that have ripped into the left side of her torso.
So,
a roommate calls 911 as Rosa Lewis loses consciousness. East Point Police, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI speed to the scene.
This is handy. A map. All marked up, yeah, and I guess they won't be needing it. Not anymore.
East Point Police Lieutenant Russell Popham can't get any answers from the victim. Not now. Maybe never.
What we were told was that she was not going to live. We were told that she was that critical, her blood pressure was already dropping, that she wasn't going to live.
Investigators turn to the physical evidence left behind. Once again, they find 40 caliber shell casings, 4 of them. Detectives know the killer, who calls himself Jack, used a 40 caliber weapon in all 4 of his previous shootings. Agents find another clue on the roof of a car that the shooter used to steady his aim.
But you could see the where he actually reached across the roof and was laying across the roof of this vehicle, shooting into the vehicle. You could see the V shape of the muzzle blast on the car itself. The connection is, this is so close. It's so close that this person could not miss. It's not like shooting from 25 feet, 50 yards away. This person got right up into the victim's face and was shooting that person.
Police search for Jack's signature clue.
We immediately began to look for a note. We had the 40 caliber casing, so we immediately began to look for a note. We could not find a note in the darkness. We could find a note, and it wasn't a windy night, so we didn't think the note had blown away. We couldn't find it.
Although no note is recovered, police find similarities between the Rosa Lewis shooting and the murder of probation officer Pamela Clark. Both women were gunned down in their cars, with multiple shots fired through the driver's side window at close range. Then detectives uncover a shocking clue that changes the entire investigation. Rosa Lewis was a probation officer just like Pamela Clark.
They knew each other. They worked in the same office together. This is too coincidental.
Detectives no longer believe the shootings are random. Somehow the Rosa Lewis and Pamela Clark shootings are related. Police interview Rosa Lewis's roommate and learn Rosa moved into the apartment 2 months ago after a recent divorce.
That she described in relationship to us as an amicable divorce. She even said that the victim's ex-husband had actually helped her move in. There was no reason to believe that he had a motivation to want to kill her.
Agents and detectives go door to door, searching for any witnesses to the shooting.
And we did find one lady who actually lives on a street behind the apartment complex who said she heard the shot. She looked out her window and she saw a car leaving that area. And she described it as a blue car, and she gave us that it was similar to a particular make of a car. So we had now a car, the kind of car we're possibly looking for, the make and model. We just weren't certain what the tag number was on the vehicle.
The witness never saw the killer's face. Once again, police are left with only a vehicle description. Later that morning, police notify Rosa Lewis's family about the shooting, including her ex-husband, William Lewis.
We knock on the door and nobody answers. And we knock a few more times and we're about to leave, and as we turn around to walk to our car, a car pulls in. The first thing that we notice is that this car that pulled in was very similar, if not the same kind of car that was described leaving the shooting.
The man driving the car is William Lewis. Detectives break the tragic news to him.
When we told him that his ex-wife had been shot multiple times and may die, he wasn't shocked. He didn't ask, how is she doing? He didn't say, I have to get to her. He didn't say, what are you doing to get this person? It's almost as if we had notified him that it was something that was not really that significant.
Hours after the shooting, police could expect to find a weapon. Signed in yellow highlight with William Lewis's jacket. But they find nothing. Investigators asked Lewis for consent to search his house. He agreed. The living room is clean, but it's only one of many rooms. In the bedroom, police find items that would be common in any home office. But in this case, they have a chilling significance.
Why are you not working hard?
As I was standing in the bedroom, I looked over at his dresser, and on his dresser were several highlight markers. It was the same colors of the notes that we had before.
The discovery prompts detectives to ask Lewis to come downtown for questioning. He agrees.
I think he wanted to be as cooperative as he could. He wanted to convince us that he was not the person.
Police have no way of knowing if they just put Jack in their car, or if it's another dead end. Probation officer Rosa Lewis lies in a coma after being shot 4 times in the chest. Police believe she's the 5th victim of a serial shooter who calls himself Jack. Detectives find circumstantial evidence that points to the victim's ex-husband, William Lewis.
A short while ago,
But they still have no idea why he went by the name Jack, or what prompted his shooting spree. While Lewis is transported to the police station for questioning, other investigators are dispatched to the probation office where his ex-wife, Rosa Lewis, worked. They search her desk for clues.
So that a drug addict,
It's the same office in which the first victim of the shooting spree, Pamela Clark, worked.
Jimenez died because he stood between a junkie and a bag full of narcotics.
Investigators find evidence that Rosa Lewis feared for her life. Weeks before she was shot, she wrote a letter and placed it in her desk. It said if anything happened to her, it was her ex-husband who was responsible.
I have taken steps to see that this never happens again.
Point Police Detective Bobby
For their own safety,
William Lewis made threats
I have
to stop
moved
Rosa
Lieutenants
from
Whitaker
divorcing.
and Weaver into the Ark,
He would tell her things
where
like,
they will
I
be
know
under
people.
protective
I know
watch,
people who can do things.
24 hours a
I know how
day.
to get rid of you. And he would say things like, I will blow your head off.
In her letter, Rosa Lewis also
call
implicates
is
her
going
ex-husband
out.
in the murder of Pamela Clark.
Any person who has highly trained knowledge and
Pamela helped Rosa
skills
through the
cannot be
divorce.
replaced. Mechanics,
Force
engineers,
lawyer.
scientists,
It
medical
made William
personnel
Lewis furious.
are to be taken from active duty and
His
removed to
mind,
the Ark
if
until
he
this
had
war
not
is
talked his
over.
wife into leaving
Now
him,
on.
his wife would still be with
No
him.
one
He was so mad at her that that was going to be the
unless
first
they are
person
on
that he
special
lashed out.
assignment and unless they are personally
Pamela was
vetted
murdered
by
the
myself.
night before Rosa
There
left her
will
husband
be
for
no exceptions.
During questioning, detectives confront the note found in Rosa's desk.
Our enemy has never been the freaks. They know not what they do.
And we actually read the letter to him in the interview and asked him about the threats that he was making. And he told us that those are just empty. So those are empty threats. Those are empty threats. There's nothing to that. They're empty.
Evil surrounds us.
It's just words. That's all it was.
They ask William Lewis more about his relationship with his wife. They learn the couple's wedding anniversary is April 8th, the same day Chuck Boiler was shot and Andrew Wilson was murdered.
What we've theorized is he had probably sitting at home all day on Sunday. It's his wedding anniversary. He wanted his wife, and we think he became angry and just went out and shot 2 random victims.
Detectives review Lewis's credit card records and learn he rented a car on April 8th. The car matches the description of the vehicle a witness saw leaving the Andrew Wilson murder scene.
And according to him, he liked to rent a lot of cars. Weekly income to 2 cars that he rented. and the 2 cars that he rented were both seen leaving shootings. And that was very important.
Hey, Deke. Corporal.
During the grueling 3-hour interrogation, Lewis remains deceptive and evasive in his answers.
Okay.
He makes up stories about probationers who wanted
See
to
you,
kill
Corporal
his
St. John.
ex-wife. Investigators see through the smoke screen.
Corporal St. John.
Hey, Sarge. How's life?
It was about 5
Credit
o'clock.
burning a hole in your man purse or what?
For shooting his wife.
Oh, big spender. Cheap in buying a new one, right? Come on, am I right? Well, yeah, it makes sense. I'd do that if I had enough credits, you know?
Targeted by the shooter known as Jack.
Okay.
If William Lewis is Jack, police still have to prove it.
We had to connect him back to these other incidents. We had some circumstantial evidence, but we didn't feel at that time we had nowhere near enough to convict him.
FBI Special Agent Pete McFarland believes one way to link Lewis to the other shootings is through shell casings and bullets.
The lab said all the bullets from the previous crime scenes came from the same weapon. The bullets that shot Miss Lewis came from the same weapon.
Well, would you like to taste it? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Corporal.
East Point Police Lieutenant Russell Popham knows locating...
I hope you were careful. This is very toxic.
Yeah, sure thing, ma'am.
To this day, we have never found the firearm. We executed 8 search warrants looking for this firearm, and we have never found the firearm.
I didn't thank you this time.
Police seized the highlighters found in William Lewis's bedroom.
As you were.
But they are a popular brand. Even if the ink matches the notes the shooter left behind, a jury could still have reasonable doubts. The notes themselves might, however, contain forensic evidence. Crime scene technicians dust the notes for fingerprints and find only unreadable smudges. They find some of the smudges along the torn edges were not made by fingers, but by human lips.
We believe what happened was that this person had licked the piece of paper and tore it off, moistened the paper, basically, and left his lip prints.
With the paper moistened, it would be easier for to tear it along the fold. The shooter avoided leaving his fingerprints on the notes, but technicians find traces of saliva that contains DNA. Investigators compared DNA taken from the notes with a sample taken from William Lewis. The DNA matches. William Lewis is Jack.
Even though we didn't have a murder weapon from him, we had his DNA. The saliva is on these notes, and they're at 3 of the scenes.
William Charles Lewis is indicted on 26 counts in connection with the East Point shooting spree.
I have
The
had
district attorney plans to seek the
a
death
revelation. Last night, a new group of recruits joined our ranks and have already been sworn in. They have traveled far from the east,
emerges from her
west,
coma
south,
after
and
months of
north.
hospitalization.
They're
and
coming to
eventually
this
returns
place.
home.
At this time is no accident. They bring word of more
In September
camps,
2001,
like the one to the
5 months
south,
after
which
Rosa
we
Lewis
have
was
purged.
murdered, police
Camps
respond
filled
to
with
her home once again.
degenerates, thieves, drug addicts, and murderers. We are threatened. All of us.
Called me, said,
Every day.
I just got a letter.
We live in the shadow of death.
I want you to come down here and get it.
But that shadow is not cast by rabid freaks that surround us. They are part of God's plan.
From the letter, detectives learned the bizarre motives behind
part of God's punishment.
They knew that if he killed the first victim,
No!
Which was his wife's friend, it would bring a lot of hurt to his wife.
It is not the freaks who threaten to destroy us.
The third victim.
It is our fellow man.
The fourth victim were
like Noah.
They were just to throw the police
before
off.
us.
The letter closes
We have
all
built
5 cases and sees Norris's fate.
Not only did
To
we
see
have his
all
DNA
the
in the
knowledge. So when the flood waters recede, we may rebuild.
This age, with his confession written,
here at the end of the world,
to all counts.
God is not sending the oceans from their beds to rise up and sweep away the damned. There will be new baptism of water.
Just to lead us away from.
In this last age,
the whole purpose is
we are the flood. We are sent forth to baptize the world with fire. Today, we begin a holy war against all those who have brought down the wrath of God. We will move north, seek out the depraved, and cleanse.
The 8th of February 1919, Riverside, California. The half-naked corpse of a woman was found in a grapefruit orchard on the outskirts of the city by 2 local workers.
We didn't know who she was. We lifted up her shirt, and right in the middle of her chest were 4 very distinct stab wounds.
Forensic scientists later identified the woman as 35-year-old sex worker Carol Miller. Her stab wounds were a calling card of the so-called Riverside prostitute killer who'd already slain 3 women. 39-year-old Bill Suff would go on to take another 9 victims.
I would tell the girls, stay off the streets for a while. It's not safe. There is a serial killer.
But by day, Suff was a model employee for the local council.
He was very friendly. He was the guy next door. He was a million.
Lieutenant Whitaker, come in.
This monster. Brutalizing. Horrible.
Hang on, I'm coming.
The Jekyll and Hyde killer even attacked his own children.
I was not wanting to believe that he would kill Bartok. There's no rhyme or reason for it.
Suff beat his 2-month-old daughter to death. He brutally killed and mutilated 12 women. He spread fear across the county of Riverside, making Bill Suff one of the world's most evil killers.
Can't you stand guard or do whatever it is you're doing out there?
Colonel's orders. Gotta keep eyes on you at all times.
Yeah, well, fuck the colonel's orders.
Hey, you watch your mouth. Things are changing around here. And if you don't follow the orders...
The 23rd of December 1991, Riverside, California. A workman made a shocking discovery. He found the body of 39-year-old Eleanor Cassandra.
What's the plan?
Lying in orange graves.
How are we gonna get out of here? There's everyone.
Stabbed, and was the 3rd
O'Brien,
we're heading up the cone. We got one shot at this. The Riverside prostitute killer.
Who's O'Brien? Where are we going?
When we look at this particular it was very violent. And if we look at what he did with the victim's breast,
I can't see the ring right now.
and then he threw it some 40 feet away, he's just discarding this woman's body part like it's trash. And I think that's how he saw these victims.
Wait, so who's O'Brien? How's he doing his job?
Bravado, the
I told you O'Brien is how I found you. He was the Nero soldier who was there that night that I put in the chopper.
Local detective Christine Sheffield had warned Eleanor about a serial murder on the loose only days earlier.
When we saw Eleanor, I was just
Frank,
oh my God.
are you paying attention? Eyes on your work, man. That canister, right there.
And I knew she had little children. Fight back your emotions.
I don't want to see
instead
that
of getting
canister fall.
Knowing a serial killer was on the rampage, shocked the county of Riverside.
The fear was rampant. It affected people's willingness to go out at night and just walk in their neighborhoods. And the papers played up to that. There was a great deal of building pressure on us, law enforcement, to find this individual.
Yeah, look, it's a long story. I'll tell you all about it once we get
Killer
there.
story begins on the 20th of August, 1950. William Lester Sutton was born in Torrance,
Yeah, I'm
California.
pretty sure they do. Look, you can ask O'Brien when you see him.
On the outside, his family did appear to be very traditional. He was the eldest of 5 siblings. But there was an incredibly abusive relationship that went on between Suf's parents. And when a child grows up in an environment like this, they learn violence is a way of getting what you want. Violence is a way of maintaining feelings of control. And those are very toxic things.
His mother, Elizabeth, was domineering, overbearing. His father, William, rather remote. I'm not suggesting for a moment there was abuse, but there was certainly a very poor male role model anywhere around.
At the age of 16, Suf's father walked out on the family.
Well done.
And his mother was left bringing up 5 children on her own. Suf had to work part-time to support his family, who were in dire straits.
Well, Suf had to take on
You want to go
quite
with
a
me
considerable
to Lost
role
Lake? I mean,
looking after
I
his
thought we were going to
siblings.
Cloverdale.
He had a lot of responsibility. He was essentially an adult in this house. And I think that impacted upon his own development to make him quite an isolated and quite a solitary individual.
Elizabeth starts up another relationship with a man she was eventually to go on.
Average grades. He also developed an interest in music and learned to play
You want to go
the
with me
trumpet.
to Lost Lake? I mean, I thought we were going to Cloverdale.
As a matter of fact, his senior year in high school, his high school marching band had been selected to participate in the Rose Parade, which is quite an accomplishment.
It was here, playing with his band, that the 18-year-old Suf met his first love, Terrell, who was just 15.
He was kind of cute, and so naturally we all flirted. At the time, I was infatuated. I thought he was a cute guy. He asked me for my phone number, and I gave it to him. And then I heard from a couple months
You want to go
later
with me
he was
to
going
Lost
to
Lake? I mean, I thought we were going to Cloverdale.
Suf Terrell from his Air Force base in Texas, where he was training to be a medic. And just over a year later, in May 1969, he asked for her hand in marriage. But Terrell had suffered a devastating event.
He had been raped, got pregnant, and said, no, I can't.
This is restricted.
Questioning me,
And I told him what happened, and he said, well, I want to marry you anyway.
Nice job.
So we did.
You too.
Although Suf had
Come on, we're almost.
accepted
Yeah, okay, this is it.
Terrell had been raped
We're at the cone.
and that she was carrying the child. Ironically, he didn't accept the child.
Lied and told Terrell that the Air Force didn't allow children to live at the base. She was forced to leave the baby with Suf's mother and stepfather in California and make the move to join him in Texas alone.
For him, it was an opportunity to exert control over somebody else. Terrell was someone who was quite vulnerable, who had been through quite a lot. So I think he took advantage of that situation.
Pretty much his behavior started changing when I moved to Texas. Because then he felt like he had complete control over me. He started to
Where is he? Where's O'Brien?
He'll be here. We just, Gentlemen, this is the top of the cone where you can see we get an amazing view here.
Suf was discharged from the Air Force.
I've just been giving this group of new recruits a tour of the island.
First child.
We're just about to go down into the Ark. You should join us. Gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Whitaker. She heads up part of the research team that's exploring ways to use poison to defeat our enemies.
I think far
Wait!
Stay back!
Those feelings.
to tell you
Don't
that we
listen
were
to
going
him.
on a
He's a
supply
murderer
run.
and a spy.
Why would you
Do
listen
remember
to
that
him
camp I
over
told
me?
you about?
You know
I am
not.
like the leader of that camp. Ross Lake sent him here.
Full of shit.
telling you.
I've never even met this motherfucker.
Colonel, you've got to believe me.
Their second child, a daughter called Dejanay, affectionately known as
Spy.
Matt, this
Whilst
guy's
Carol went
crazy.
out to
You've never
work,
seen him
the
before.
father
He comes out of nowhere and you believe
What's
him?
that camp you're saying I'm from?
You think
Lost
I'm lying?
what?
Is that it? I'm not lying. Have him show us your back. Huh? Show us your back.
Enough! That's my
They
last
try
warning.
and use that tactic on
Now we will get to the truth of this matter.
Adam. If it's going to make baby private.
Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Captain Curry, I forget, is that the 8th or the 9th commandment?
I don't rightly recall, sir.
Tell me what you saw, and don't lie to me, son. I'll know.
At Lost Lake Camp, he attacked a woman.
What the fuck are you?
He wasn't wearing a shirt. Son of a bitch has a tattoo covering his back. It's some satanic shit. It's some kind of dog, a dead dog chewing through a chain or something, like it was nothing. I pulled him off her. He was drunk and we fought like hell, but who knows what wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have been there. You make him show us his back, and you will see who's lying.
Cigarette burns. It's really awful.
I'm sorry, Colonel. This shit is just so crazy.
Turn.
In hugging and kissing.
Image of Cerberus, the Hound of Hades. How fitting that you were discovered ascending from the underworld. But you are not Cerberus, are you, Deacon St. John?
You hide behind angelic names and clothe yourself in lies! He got kicked out! You are Judas! And what about you, Lieutenant? How convenient that you were with the Drifter when the Nero helicopter came by.
Colonel, I do not know what you're talking about.
You were in a Nero camp that was overrun. How long have you been spying on us? How long?
That I promise, I haven't been.
turned upside down even further when she took charges of murder. Their son was taken
I
into
expect
care.
men like him to betray me!
In 1974, both parents were sentenced to 70 years for killing their daughter.
It was me!
My son, I'd lost my daughter.
Colonel,
And
I lied.
I really had nothing.
If you look in my pocket, you're gonna find a radio.
Devastated, destroyed.
Because I called them.
I wasn't sure how I was going to actually.
I called them and I lied. I lied to the lieutenant.
20 months
I told
into
her
her.
that, I needed her to help me check a shipment, but the truth is, I just needed a hostage.
Deacon St. John, Drifter, are you there? This is Nero. This is O'Brien, Drifter.
I'm sorry. Corporal St. John is unavailable right now.
I've immediately started drug horse proceedings, and it was one of the best days of my life.
Meanwhile, her ever manipulative ex-husband was making his own plans for an early release.
When Sub's in prison, he demonstrates the kind of behaviour that officials want to see. He's compliant. He appears to be someone trying to better himself.
He volunteered for the prison library. He took 2 degrees, caused no trouble whatever.
Release Private.
He's such a model prisoner that he serves only 10 years his sentence and is released in 1984.
Take this Drifter to lockup. Tomorrow at 0700, he will stand trial.
He moved back to California and found a job in the county of Riverside selling Greyhound bus tickets.
He appeared to be a real pillar of the community, and it diverts attention away from him. He blends in. He's the average Joe.
Tell me more about
In
this
October
lost lady.
1986, Suff got a new job as a supply clerk for Riverside County. He'd started dating a teacher called Bonnie and moved in with her to help care for her elderly grandmother.
He's effectively creating the persona, the quiet man who doesn't mind helping very well. But within, something quite different was happening.
People at work loved him. He was good to everybody on the outside. He had this facade going on about him that you could trust him, that he was a kind and giving person, but at the time, he had that secret devil within him.
Suf split up from his girlfriend Bonnie after he admitted stealing money from her grandmother. He often spent nights cruising the local red light districts looking for casual sex. He developed a hatred for the women he saw on the streets.
I think he reserved a particular distaste for sex workers because he saw them as less than women. He saw them as women who weren't fulfilling the roles of the caregiver and the nurturer, and he had some very rigid ideas about who women are and how they should behave.
Soon this seething resentment would escalate. In January...
Good. I thought I heard you breathing.
Driving down Main Street in Lake Elsinore, when he spotted a young woman called Rhonda Jetmore. They agreed on $20 for sex, and she demands the money up front.
Dead dog chewing through its chains. Not something you see every day.
The bill, and she switches the flashlight on.
Digging.
To look at it, instead of it being a $20 bill, it's a $1 bill. Now,
I don't know.
She's furious.
Trying to make sense
I'm
of it.
not doing this $1 bill. She is angry.
This was taken from the lieutenant.
Suf launches himself at her in an attempt to begin to strangle her.
Rhonda fought back, smashing Suf around the head with her flashlight and made her escape.
It ain't them.
I think it taught Suf something very specific.
You've been out here all this time?
Never let them survive. If you attack them, they must be killed. You cannot.
You just asked me why. Pretty simple, really. The way I figure it, any man who goes through God knows what to find his old lady does not deserve to die at the end of a rope.
Wait a second. You're helping me? Well, that just means you're all gonna hang.
We're not going back. The Colonel is batshit crazy. Holy war, genocide, I mean, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, well then, what's the plan? What are you gonna do?
We're going east. Yeah. Hopefully we can make it to Reno. You should come with us.
Nope.
Well, you can't go back. The militia will shoot you on
I'm
sight.
not leaving without her. And I gotta ride north. I got a warrant Iron Mike.
It's way too late for that now.
Why?
They spent all night clearing the Santiam Pass.
What?
A convoy rode out early this morning heading north.
Oh, shit.
Are you sure you don't want to come with us?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Any rib or stuff may have disappeared. 6 months on the...
Good luck to you, Deacon St. John.
Hey, Corey. When I told the Colonel about my military service, I told him I hated every goddamn minute of it, but, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if...
Couple discovered her body the following day.
She was wearing men's clothing. The suspect had mutilated her body.
You know,
the evidence...
Maybe it's not too late.
Dressed after she was killed. Was that she not the typical kind of stabbings that we see when somebody's enraged. These were very controlled, very clean looking. Would indicate somebody had control over their senses and their emotions at the time.
It wasn't until the autopsy later that day that detectives discovered the true horror of Suf's final act of humiliation.
Gotta get back to Lost Lake. I gotta head north. I gotta save Boozer, Ricky, Iron Mike. I can't save Sarah. I can't save Sarah, but I can save them.
Now, according to the pathologist, he felt that the suspect had to take quite a bit of time with her because the light bulb was intact. It hadn't broken.
With at least 2 victims under his belt now,
I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry. I am not giving up. I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna come back for you. I swear to God. I am coming back for you. I get north. Take the Santiam Highway. It's clear now. Yeah, that's fastest way.
One area on a dirt road just outside of Lake House. And the unique thing with Darla Ferguson was that she was nude, she was strangled, just like the other victims, but her upper torso was covered in very trash. He was tied in the waist.
later,
This way.
on the 6th of February,
Head north.
Suff had identified a hunting ground closer to home. He picked up 35-year-old Carol Miller from Riverside's Red Light District, University Avenue. He stabbed and strangled her, then dumped her in a grapefruit orchard on the outskirts of the city. She was discovered 2 days later by agricultural workers.
Well, I went up to Carol Miller. For sure. Next to her, very distinct.
Something else that the killer's van had left at the scene.
There were hundreds of tire tracks, so we took literally hundreds and hundreds of pictures to document them, so that they matched anything else.
Questions were now starting to be asked about whether this series of killings could in fact be linked.
Tina Real, Darla Ferguson, and they had occurred in consecutive months. So we didn't really know what was going to happen. We were expecting the case. So it got a serial killer. So now the object was, well, let's analyze the evidence and see what we can come up with.
Whilst investigators pored over the evidence he left behind, serial killer Suff had made his mark, killing the sex workers he so despised. Despite having killed at least 4 sex workers, his rampage had only just begun. At night, Suff stalked the streets in his van, looking for his next victim. But by day, the local county clerk was a pillar of the community.
Riverside County was promoting a rideshare program to conserve energy, and interestingly enough, Mr. Suff was the poster for. He was on the front page of the news. And the headline said, "Take a ride with Bill," and he had kidnapped and murdered and arrested all these women.
Things were going well for Suff. Not only was he a model employee, he'd started a new relationship.
He meets Cheryl, and there's got to be at least, I would say 20 years difference in their age.
She was only a teenager. Abusive and controlling men tend to target younger women because they are easier to manipulate, they're easier to isolate, they're easier to shape and mould and to chip away at their sense of identity.
The whirlwind romance. He rushes her off to Las Vegas, they get married. She doesn't really know anything about him. She's a child compared to this mature adult who also happens to be a serial killer. Cheryl becomes pregnant.
Despite being a newlywed, Suff could not suppress his need to kill. So he came up with a clever ruse to tell his new and expectant wife.
He had disaster preparedness pamphlets. I don't know if he ever passed any of them out, but he convinced her that that's what he was doing at that time.
Just 7 months after getting married, Suff was looking for his next victim. On the 30th of October, he returned to University Avenue in the city of Riverside, where he picked up 33-year-old Cheryl Coker. After sex, he strangled her, then placed her body into a dumpster. She was Suff's 5th victim, and in his final depraved act, he sliced off her right breast.
He's making judgments about them as women because they are obviously a part of nurturing children. And I think this is perhaps his way of saying these women are not fit to be mothers. They are not fit to be women.
Stop moving,
Is that all of them, huh? Where'd you all go? Yeah.
It went all the way up the embankment on the top up there. So that was rather unusual.
Once again, he leaves. DNA and fiber evidence behind, he's not grown any more aware of forensic proof than he was before.
Just 7 weeks later, on the 21st of December, another sex worker, Susan Sternfeld, was found strangled in a dumpster close to the location of the previous killing.
When you're starting to find placed in dumpster areas, you start to do a little bit of a tie-in. So, in my mind, I'm thinking that there's somebody out there that feels these women are nothing more than trash. And so we're going to treat them like trash. After we treat them, we're going to dump them in the trash.
Now, Seth, the prostitute hater, was picking up pace with his murders. Barely a month later, on the 18th of January 1991, 42-year-old Kathy Puckett vanished while crossing University Avenue in Riverside. She was found strangled the next day by a motorist at the side of a dirt road 30 miles away. Forensic scientist Steve Sikowski attended the scene and made an important discovery.
I saw dozens of tire tracks, and I noticed that there was one that struck a familiar chord to some of the tire tracks in the Carol Miller case. We have finally some physical evidence that would link at least two of the cases. That was the first time that we now had some evidence forensically that said we have a serial killer.
When Steve Sikowski started looking for other evidence linking the spate of sex worker killings, his suspicions were confirmed.
I started looking at all the trace evidence, the fibers, and saw some commonalities. I saw fibers that were gray in color from one victim to the next. So we were starting to build up some idea that, in fact, we do have a series going on, a serial killer behind this thing.
To us, it was not that they were prostitutes, they were human beings being killed. Women are being killed and dumped in places all over the place. So we need to make a tie-in here.
Now that there was conclusive evidence confirming that a serial killer was on the loose, a task force was created linking the various law enforcement agencies investigating the killings in both Riverside and Lake Elsinore. They put out posters appealing for locals to come forward with any relevant information and offering a reward of $11,000. By the 27th of April, they had 8 dead sex worker on their hands, 24-year-old Sherry Lacer. For the forensic team, gathering evidence at this crime scene proved much more difficult.
We were in the process of looking at the body to see if there were any fibers on it. We already saw a shoe print, and the sprinkler system came on. It was just a small little garden area behind the bowling alley. We were standing on top of literally sprinklers coming up on us to keep the water off the body, and yelling, "Have them shut the sprinkler system off."
With the sprinklers washing away potential evidence, it reduced the amount of information forensics could gather. They did find traces of semen on Sherry's body. Despite having a heavily shower on the 3rd of July, someone struck again, taking his next victim, 37-year-old Sherry Latham.
The whole task force is starting to feel pressure because we have these bodies that are closer to identifying and providing that kind of information.
3 weeks later, Suf became a father once again when Cheryl gave birth to their daughter. Whilst he was forced to spend some time at home, the task force were making every effort to close.
One of the deputies was assigned to try and identify some shoe impressions that were left at several of the scenes. What he did...
Oh, damn it, they're taking over the old Nero checkpoint. Not getting through here without a fight.
Which means it's an exercise.
Let's do this.
That deputy shoe stores, picking up shoes.
Come on, you sons of bitches.
To try and find the same pattern. And after many hours, he was successful. He found it. So now we had a shoe identified. Shoe size identified.
Meanwhile, forensic scientist Steve Sikowski found work that started to
So I started putting all my effort into it.
But an even bigger break would come for the task force on the 15th of August. At 10 p.m., serial killer Bill Suff was once again cruising Riverside's red light district.
Suspect out, Sergeant Craig, comes across She is spirited and not one to say fools gladly. They make a deal.
She understood him. He went with him to the dogs. She wanted him to rob her.
His dad said he wanted to take Kelly out to nearby orchards for sex, but she refused.
Booze, are you there? Come back. Booze, man, come back.
Deke, is it you? Got movement here, goddammit! Annie, get the wounded inside.
Boozer!
Kelly recovered from her encounter with Suff. She witnessed him pick up her friend and fellow sex worker, Kelly further down University Avenue.
I'm coming, Boozer, I'm almost there. Skizzo! Skizzo, he's there, Boozer, he's coming for you.
They're coming in through the gate. Go, go! Let him come, please.
Boozer! Kelly in the back of his head, and then strangled her with a hip.
Ricky, Boss Lake Camp, come in. Ricky, Mike, come in.
Deke, you're alive. Skizzo said you were dead. Find Skizzo. Damn it. Find Iron Mike.
Ricky, talk to me. What's going on?
Skizzo came rolling in with an army militia. Find him now. The lot. Get up to...
On the 16th August, an office worker found Kelly Howard's body and called the police.
They're pulling out. They're on the run. We got it. Where's Skizzo? Has anyone seen Skizzo? We did it. Right on, dude.
As a local sex worker, so she investigated the latest murder using her
Bunch of us have
contacts
been
on
looking
the
for him.
street.
No one's seen him.
Hey, come on, we gotta go.
Hey, don't worry. We're gonna find that asshole.
Thank God, come on. So I went to University Avenue.
It's Iron Mike, he got
and I
shot.
looked for Kelly Whiteford. And I found her. I said, get in the car. And I asked her, when's the last time you saw Kelly Hammond? She goes, oh, I saw her last night. Why? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you this. I go, Kelly was murdered last night.
Hey, you lazy son of a bitch, I
And so
want to
she, of course,
see
became
if you want to go
hysterical.
fishing. We got a camp to feed.
Kelly told Detective Keir Sheffield about her altercation with the client in the van and how the same man had picked up her friend. With this breakthrough of finally finding a witness, the task force rushed in a forensic artist to create a sketch.
Yeah, look, I couldn't have done this without your help.
Gave an awesome description. I was ecstatic. I just felt that we were getting close.
So we now have a drawing of
Alpha Galden.
excited with this. This is the best type of information.
Detective Keir Sheffield was asked by his superiors to update them.
What? I guess.
Say this guy, starts off he's only doing females, and now we're getting Hispanic females.
I was wrong, Deke.
But he's never done it.
No, we can keep this
following
together.
day,
Mike, you get back on your feet.
He decided to do it. And he put the information out. And it came out in the newspaper.
So, on the 12th of September, Suff had a sinister surprise in store. He picked up a black sex worker, 30-year-old Catherine McDonald, stabbed and strangled her, then left her on a deserted building site 40 miles south in Lake Elsinore.
Yeah, I'm here, Mike.
I think he was thumbing his nose at us saying, you don't know what I like. You can't guess who I'm going to do next. And I'm a free man out here. I think he was taunting us.
Suff repeated many of the hallmarks he used in his previous killings, so that the police could be in no doubt as to whose handiwork this was. But in his haste to show off, he also unwittingly left clues.
Where Catherine McDonald was laid was an area that had a lot of fresh dirt, which is very conducive to cars driving over it, leaving very good tire track impressions. Forensically, there was a lot of information just in the tire tracks and shoe prints.
What investigators didn't realize was that on the very same day their serial killer was hiding in plain sight. Two newly appointed members of the task force were visiting the council warehouse Suff worked at to collect new office furniture when their pagers...
No easy way to say this.
They asked Bill Suff if they could use his telephone to call dispatch, and so Suff said sure.
Try to stop Schizo.
While Bill Suff was
pulling out,
nearby watching,
Iron Mike being
these
Iron Mike.
investigators were taking
Trying
down
to reason
notes
with him.
on the very body and the very person of the victim.
Yeah, shut up! Shut up! This ain't no eulogy. Iron Mike wouldn't want that.
He felt the feeling that he was smarter than us.
Because the men that we killed today... There's more where that came from.
Relished watching
A lot
the
more.
police run around in
I've been in their
circles,
camp.
trying to
I've seen
work
their
out
army.
who was behind the slayings. At home, things were beginning to slip. Suff was once again struggling with being a father.
So history almost repeats itself here.
Unless we hit them
And
first.
This is a very toxic, a very dangerous environment against which to really shut because he doesn't possess those feelings of attachment and warmth.
Listen to him. Iron Mike trusted him, so you have to trust him.
No, I'm sorry, you know what?
Cheryl threatened to leave Suff because of the abuse he'd subjected their daughter to.
You're right.
But manipulative as ever, he asked for one more chance to change his ways, and she decided to stay.
Bill was pleading
If I'm boozing,
with
tell me
Cheryl
when
to
we
get back, making all kinds of promises. They had gotten a apartment now in the city of Colton, and she decided to go back with him. When she did, in her own way of offering him a present, she had bought a pair of Converse shoes for him for Christmas. And she had given him those shoes as an early Christmas present.
But there was no sign of Suff, the
So I
serial
found
killer,
this in the
stopping.
survivalist bunker.
7 weeks later, on the 30th of October, he
yeah,
took
we're
his
gonna need a
infamous
truck, something big,
victim,
something like a dump truck.
35-year-old sex
fill it full
worker,
of,
devious and
fertilizer. Yep, we're gonna mix it
Then,
with
barely 2 months
gallons of
later,
creosote.
on the 23rd of
fertilizer
December,
truck.
Suff lured
That's your plan.
39-year-old Eleanor Casares into his van in broad daylight.
You got civilians in the caves, you got a labor force who's considered
That the fear of getting caught does not seem
you
to
got
be
the
something
armor
that is on his radar.
and the garrison.
He's really engaging in some quite
hit
risky
that.
behaviour.
Suff killed Eleanor and took her to an orange grove just a street away from the Riverside police station. He left her body there
how do you
to
know
taunt the
that they're not
task
just gonna
force
leave her?
investigators.
Sarah and everyone else.
I don't, but I figure that the explosion will cause so much confusion and chaos that they're, I can go in, I can find her, I can get her up before they know what hit her. Look, this isn't about just Sarah anymore. The Colonel has declared war on all of us, and he's got an army to back him up.
Once again, though, Suff slipped up, leaving footprints and tire tracks in the dirt. He'd been wearing the new shoes Cheryl had given him as a gift.
Unless we hit them first.
That these are Converse tennis shoes. Because
I didn't say it was a good one.
No, it's a
and
really
from there, I
shitty
was
one.
able
With
to
me,
tell
brother.
that there were 3 different types of tires on this vehicle, and where those tires were located, where the different types were.
Having known Eleanor personally, this was a particularly difficult time
Well, we're not
for
gonna be able to do it
Detective
alone.
Keir Sheffield.
I wanted to make sure that I was there with the coroner when he told the mother.
Okay, well, if anyone wants to join you,
And the
you hit them,
brothers were
you hit them in the
absolutely
south.
out of their minds.
Because when the explosion happens,
They wanted to
we're
grab
really sure they're
guns
gonna rush
and
up
hit the
on you.
streets. And I said, please don't. I said, I
I
considered
really
it
need
our
some
friend.
supplies.
So I'm asking you, just let us handle this for the next few weeks and let's see what we can do.
Detective Keir Sheffield was determined to get the extra resources necessary to finally get this killer off her streets.
Had it been college students, there'd have been at least 100 detectives on this case. All power would have been out there on them. I just thought it was a slap in the face because it's like saying, well, okay, it's just a prostitute, so we'll give it our best shot, but we're not going to give it 100%. And I was absolutely livid. I went to the chief and they said, listen, here's what we need to do.
The chief agreed to launch a week-long intensive police operation in Riverside's red light district.
We decided decided to call it Operation.
How's it coming?
Back up.
I put a picture of the suspect.
Hey, Deke.
And I said he would be on University Avenue.
What's this?
If you see this individual and he's trying to pick up a prostitute, stop him.
Well,
On the 9th of
so it's
January
Big's tank, right?
1992, the operation
I figured.
A police motorcyclist followed Suff's van down University Avenue.
Is
A
this
short while later, he witnessed the
let's
vehicle
see, Deke.
make an illegal turn and pulled it over.
He gets Suff's driving license, which is out of date. The vehicle registration is out of date.
Oh, yeah. She's ready.
Time to fill her up.
I know where to find some fertilizer. I'll radio when I'm ready.
Okay.
The traffic cop knows what the police. Suff looks well.
So,
quite.
a couple months ago, we were up by Crazy Willie's, just scavenging, you know. I thought maybe the place wasn't picked over.
Deke, long time no see.
Look down and he
Blair, how's it going?
And I had a chart of exactly what tire was in what position on the vehicle. I then asked him to go to the passenger side rear view and tell me what the tire was.
Good choice.
When he did that, I said, freeze the scene.
Now that's an upgrade.
And the interrogation begins.
Okay.
Early in the morning, I got a
Good
phone
one.
call from my partner.
Yeah,
Bob,
good.
We got him. I said, what do you have? He goes, we got him. He's in custody. And I couldn't believe it. I got goosebumps. I mean, it was just, it's one of those feelings that I'm not sure what you can equate it to, but it was just enormous.
Okay. Deke, take care now.
Bean at the Orange Grove.
He goes, yeah, I went out to pick some more. Interview. I found a body. I said, oh, you found a body out there?
Jesus, man. When the Rippers hit us,
I asked myself, who
I thought we were all gone.
finding a body will go on to work.
Yeah.
Suff then
Hey,
stopped talking and
Stay
never
home.
admitted his guilt. But when his apartment was searched, the police found another pair of sneakers that matched shoe prints left at
Good to
some
see
of
you,
the
Deke.
other crime scene.
Buzz, how's a
Most
camper's
telling
life?
of all, the same
fill her up.
grey carpet from Suff's
Sure.
van
All right.
was linked to fibers found on
Stop by anytime.
and his DNA matched
Got good shit in
profiles
stock
discovered.
today.
It's right. Tied at the time that he was arrested. On the 25th of March, 1985, finally at the Riverside Hall, not guilty to 13 counts of murder. Deputy District Attorney Paul Zellerbach presented the case for the prosecution.
I called 271 witnesses to testify during that trial. We had over 1,000 pieces of evidence. The trial lasted 7 months, and it was all a lot of circumstantial evidence.
But on the 19th of July 1995, the jury finally delivered their verdict, finding him guilty on 12 of the 13 counts. He was also found guilty of the attempted murder of Rhonda Jetmore. On the murder of Sherry Pazer, they were unable to make a unanimous decision, despite Suff's semen being found inside her. The water from the sprinklers in the garden where she was found had potentially destroyed vital evidence. On the 10th of October 1995,
Thinking we can find all the fertilizer we need over at the Iron Butte Ranch.
Iron Butte Ranch?
Yeah, it's not like Jesse and his Rippers are gonna need it anymore. I mean, this place used to be a golf resort, yeah? They've got a maintenance area, you know, lawnmowers.
Fertilizer. Goddamn right.
Yeah, I'm gonna head over there right now. When it's clear, I'm gonna radio you and Ricky to bring the truck in.
You got it, brother. All right, books are out.
Deke, you there?
Yeah, Ricky.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming back to help us.
I'm just sorry I was too late.
You weren't. We'll stop him. Skizzo, we're gonna stop him, right? I wanted to say I'm sorry about Sarah. I can't imagine what you must be going through losing someone twice like that.
Hey, I haven't lost her yet. We're building a really big bomb, remember?
Glad to have you.
Hey, Ricky, it wasn't. No. Iron Mike, I mean, he was only trying to... Hey, Ricky, it wasn't his fault. No, Iron Mike, I mean, he was only trying to do the right thing.
Ricky helped. Unimaginable horror. When police began investigating the disappearance of their daughter, it led them right to the west front door. Detectives were only just beginning to
Hold on, I'm coming. We're gonna die out here. I know of a camp where it's safe.
Camp?
Where?
Show me. I'll go. Things to play with. They are disposable. They're things there to be used and abused.
Head to Lost Lake. Ask for Ricky Patel. She'll take you in.
But he found in Rose the perfect sorcerer's device.
This is the story of how Fred and Rose West became two of the world's most evil killers.
Yeah, let him know it was Deacon St. John. Okay, keep running. Stay out of sight.
Deke, you there?
Skizzo, you got some nerve calling me.
Bro, there you are. You gotta listen. I tried to stop him. I did. Shooting Iron Mike. I did not want it to go down like that.
Including their own daughter in their house of horrors. And between them responsible for another 3 victims buried around Gloucestershire. When the news broke in February 1954, the media were only scratching the surface behind the closed doors. Days and nights into
Yeah, look, I'll tell him I'll be right there.
Captain, didn't take you long to lie your way to a promotion.
This army crap is all bullshit, you know it. But bro, you gotta listen.
I'm not bro, Skizzo.
Fair enough. I just want you to know. We busted I went crazy. Russian was in on it. Went after Whitaker. He was gonna kill her, Deke.
But Fred and Rose's horrifying story began many years before.
But I stopped him.
In 1969,
I did.
28-year-old
I told him that all that poison shit she's cooking up, maybe we use it to kill the freaks. Maybe we don't. Maybe there's an enemy camp. Maybe they got one water supply. Maybe look into that. Maybe that solves a lot of problems. Anyway, Colonel, he likes that idea. So he puts me in charge of the Ark. Wants me to keep it safe. She reports to me now, Deke. To me.
What do you want, Skizzo?
Bro, I just wanted to warn you. They're coming. I can't stop them. They're coming, and this time the Colonel's bringing the whole damn house.
Well, let him. We're not going anywhere. And when he comes this time, we'll be ready for him.
Hey, Deke. Captain, the Colonel's waiting. I'll be there, goddammit! Now get out! Hey, Deke. Look, I gotta go. But, I'll tell Lieutenant Whitaker that you send your best wishes. Captain Sarkozy signing off.
Oh, goddamn you, Skizzo. How'd you like that, huh? Shooting me, you fucking bastard.
childhoods that they had were far from normal, but with one another they felt that familiarity.
Maybe it was something that Rose gave off implicitly, but something in Fred connected with what had happened to Rose and the way she was and the way she'd been treated by her father, and it was like a union of two souls.
I think it was the perfect storm. You know, the chances of these two people meeting was, you know, it must have been a million to one, but unfortunately they did.
By 1970, just a year after meeting, they were living together. Rose was pregnant for her daughter, Heather.
Experience than Rose had come from this incredibly contained family, but I think as their relationship developed, she started to defeat and find her confidence, and I don't think that Fred ever really trusted her.
For Rose and Fred, it was all about sex at the very beginning. Fred was the originator, but he found the perfect sorcerer's apprentice, the perfect partner, someone who shared his thoughts, and someone who understood and wanted to.
So what's your plan? I'm thinking we can find all the fertilizer we need over at the Iron Butte Ranch.
Iron Butte Ranch?
Yeah, it's not like Jesse and his rippers are gonna need it anymore. I mean, this place used to be a golf resort, yeah? They've gotta have a maintenance area, you know, lawnmowers and
fertilizer. Goddamn right.
Yeah, I'm gonna head over there right now. When it's clear, I'm gonna radio you and Ricky to bring the truck in.
You got it, brother. All right, boozer out.
DQ there?
Yeah, Ricky, I'm here.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming back to help us.
I'm just sorry I was too late.
You weren't. We'll stop him. Skizzo, we're gonna stop him, right?
Yeah, we're gonna stop.
I wanted to say I'm sorry about Sarah. I can't imagine what you must be going through losing someone twice like that.
Hey, I haven't lost her yet. We're building a really big bomb, remember?
Well, we're glad to have you back. Lost like means
Hey, Ricky, it wasn't his fault. You know, Iron Mike, I mean, he was only trying to do the right thing.
What Fred Birmingham adopted
Ricky out.
as a family habit. It was, if you like, a West tradition. I don't mean to say that wasn't disgraceful, but it is nevertheless part of
Dink! You there?
Helps.
Skizzo. Oh, you got some nerve calling me.
Bro! There you are. You gotta listen. Look, I tried to stop him. I did. Shooting Iron Mike. I did not want it to go down like that. Captain, the Colonel wants to see you right away. Yeah, look, I'll tell him I'll be right there.
Captain, didn't take you long to lie your way to a promotion.
This army crap is all bullshit.
I'm not your bro, Skizzo.
Fair enough. I just wanted you to know. When Corey busted you out, the Colonel, he went crazy. Thought she was in on it. He lost his goddamn mind. He went after Lieutenant Whitaker. He was gonna kill her, Deke. Deke! But I stopped him here. I did. I told him that all that poison shit she's cooking up, maybe we use it to kill the freaks, but maybe we don't. Maybe there's an enemy camp. Maybe got one water supply. Maybe dumping a gallon of hemlock into that. Maybe that solves a lot of problems. Anyway, the Colonel, he likes that idea. So he puts me in charge of the army. Wants me to keep it safe.
What do you want, Skizzo?
Bro, I just wanted to warn you. They're coming. I can't stop them. They're coming. And this time the Colonel's bringing the whole damn house.
Well, let him. We're not going anywhere.
Under the patio of 25 Cromwell Street. When they're
Let him. We're not going anywhere. And when he comes this time, we'll be ready for
Sensing the end was nigh, Fred asked to be interviewed by police.
The Colonel's waiting.
Fred asked.
I'll be there, goddammit! Now get out! Hey, Deke. Look, I gotta go. But, I'll tell Lieutenant Whitaker that you send your best wishes. Captain Sarkozy signing off.
And later that day,
oh, God damn you, Schizo. Yeah.
Indicated where he thought Heather was buried. The following day, officers digging in that area recovered a femur, and that was taken for examination by the forensic pathologist, who confirmed it was human remains, and that turned out to be remains. Rose was being questioned at Cheltenham police station when the news reached her and her solicitor Leo Goatley.
When Rose was told that Heather's remains had been found, she gasped loudly and was very distraught. How do you interpret that? Was that her mother's shock and distress? The murderer's distress had been found it wasn't about serial killing, it was about Heather.
The police found more than they bargained for under the patio at 25 Cromwell Street.
When they found the remains, they found not just 2 ladies, but 3. The interrogating detective said to us, well, unless Heather had 3 legs, there's another body.
The police were about to unearth all the secrets that Fred and Rose West had been hiding at 25 Cromwell Street for over 2 decades. Secrets that would shock the entire nation. Fred told the investigating officers the other body was of his former lover, Shirley Robinson. Shirley hadn't been seen since 1978. When she disappeared, she was heavily pregnant with Fred's child. West also admitted that police would find a 3rd body in the garden, who he claimed was a friend of Shirley's. Throughout the questioning, he insisted on one thing, that his wife Rose knew nothing about any of the bodies.
I think when Fred was protesting Rose's innocence and taking the blame completely upon himself, I think, yes, at that point the power